It is 6:19. I would call the meeting to order. And just a few beginning words as my first official full meeting as chair, that this is a time of transition with new members and a new chair. My beginning focus at this time is around how we hear public and community ideas and questions, and how we as a board will work to find that space in a way that allows questions, comments, and answers that then are heard ahead of time of our work. The board's actual time to discuss and decide can be short. If our only time for voices is at public comment, then that time is even shorter. We'll continue to work to provide the balance of all voices and also time for the board to discuss and decide. We hope to have those opportunities as a part of the first meeting of each month where we can have dialogues and listening. Stay tuned for more details as we plan for April 1st and as we continue our work toward our core beliefs of transparency and community engagement and putting our core beliefs and our strategic plan to action. So hearing that, are there any adjustments to the agenda? Not hearing any. I'm not seeing that there's any special reception of guests in that. I mean, that's public comment part. And so then we will move into the public comment portion. We usually are using 1.5 minutes to make sure that we have time. I want to get a sense of how many members would like to have a public comment. So if you are in person, if you're planning on making a public comment, and then if you're online, if you could raise your hand if you would like a time for a public comment. I am not seeing any hands raised. Is anyone else seeing a hand raised? Why am I not seeing? Oh, okay, so there is one online. Oh, yes, now I can see it, thank you. Any other online? Then that being said, I think it is fair to adjust the time to 2 minutes at this point, and then we'll see how we're doing on that. So Kari, if you'd like to come forward for public comment. Yes, please.
Hi, everybody. So these are Hi, everybody. Kari Bradley. It's nice to see you. I work for the town of Calais, but I'm just here speaking as a citizen. I want to make 2 points. I'll be really quick. One, I wanted to acknowledge and appreciate what the board did this past budget season. It's not anybody's idea of a good time to contemplate closing a school, but it was necessary that we did that, and I thought that the dialogue in Calais, anyway, was high level. It serviced a lot of good points, and you could see people reckoning with the situation that we're in, and that's important. The other thing I want to say is that from my perspective, nothing has changed in terms of the drivers, the economic and demographic drivers that brought us to this situation. And nothing we can do will change those things. I don't think the state's going to do much. The federal government's not going to save the day. And so I foresee more decisions about school closures in our future. And in fact, I don't think it will be limited to Calais and Doty. And if we look down the road, I think there are 2 outcomes. One is that all of our students in this district are in this building. And I think that's an outcome we want to avoid. And so I'm here to encourage you to engage in discussions with our neighbors about a regional high school. I think that is the way to provide educational programming and co-curricular opportunities and all the other services that our students deserve. And it's hard. There's no guarantees that anybody wants to do that. It's very complex. People be upset, I think, even contemplating it, but It's very important, and only the board can lead that discussion. And you're in charge of strategy, and we are facing the most important strategic decision in our history, I think, as a district. So I hope you will consider that, and if I can be of any service, please let me know.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kari. Our online person, it says Andrea Tucker, but I don't think.
No, that is not correct. Sorry. No, it's my spouse's account. So yeah, it's Anthony Hauser. So,
Go ahead, Anthony.
okay, yeah, sorry. Just a couple of quick bullet points here. My comment is just on the idea of keeping pre-K at Calais. The parent of a pre-K student at the moment, I enjoy every single day that I get to drop him off at Calais specifically. I love seeing all of the interactions that he gets to have with all of the older students as they're walking down the hallway. They're engaging in wonderful social behaviors, and it's just great to see that. I hate the idea of severing that and sending him to a school that the relationships that he's already created will be pretty much removed. I just feel like Jared is doing a wonderful job at the school, including all of our pre-K with his tiny mics on Fridays. The kids get to engage with the question and answering session, which is just so wonderful to see. I've just kind of been curious. I know we've heard a lot of things, reasons, I guess, why we can't keep Calais or keep pre-K at Calais. What are some answers to or reasons, or I guess not answers, suggestions that we could have to fully get Calais to keep their pre-K class. Also, just the fact of knowing, and I assume it's still true that Calais has more registrants than East Montpelier does at the moment. That being the case, why remove the larger class from the larger community and move forward with that? I'm also a little concerned that by not keeping pre-K at Calais, we're going to deter future parents from registering their kids because of them not being able to stay close. So sorry, I'm over, and I'll end it there.
Thank you, Anthony. Are there any other, before I go to Natasha, who is reading by students' voice, are there any other public comments? Natasha.
Thanks, Diane. This is a letter that was sent to all the board members, but I was asked to share it publicly at the meeting. Dear School Board, we 7th graders at U32, Molly Connor and Juniper Cadleck, are writing to advocate for the teacher's contract to recognize religious days as separate from sick days. We care about this issue because we have Jewish family members and friends who are Muslim. We believe that the current school calendar is not fair to people who are not Christians or don't celebrate Christian holidays. We have learned that teachers need to use their one allotted sick day if they want time to celebrate with their families. However, Jewish people that celebrate the high holidays, the most holy days of the year for Jewish people, have to decide which of the 3 high holidays, holy days, to use their sick day, which is not fair to their tradition. This issue was brought to our attention when one of our teachers shared with us that she wished she could stay home to celebrate a Jewish holiday with her family, but she had already used all her sick days, so she was not able. We said that doesn't feel fair, and she replied, I'm used to it by now. If any of you have read Heartstopper, a beautiful graphic novel, the main character who was bullied for being gay shared, I'm used to it by now, when his friend expressed concern. This part made us cry and helped us understand that when people get treated like this, they might begin to believe that this is what they deserve and that their voice doesn't matter. To be clear, we are not saying that you're bullying staff, but what we are saying is that the current contract sends a message and can make staff feel like their traditions are insignificant to others.
Thank you, Natasha. Not seeing any more public comment, we'll move into the next section, which is the board overview.
All right. Thank you, everybody. So I have provided you with a couple of things. So, and somewhere in your pile of stuff that was just delivered, there's a book called The Governance Core 2.0, which is about school boards and superintendents working together. And so we will probably use this book throughout the next year. And we won't be reading every page. I encourage you to, but we will look at a few sections to help us as we do some of our work. And Diane and I actually met today with the Vermont School Boards Association to talk about some board training over the next several months for us, just to give some help. We're a new board essentially with new people, new chair, and so we want to make sure that we do that. The other handout that you have, I'm going to borrow yours for a second. So this other piece is some information about the school and school system and things like your executive session, Robert's rules, and Vermont's open meeting law. So we're going to get additional trainings on this, but there's also a reason why there's empty pages to this, which is this is where we're going to keep giving you some resources. So you're building your own little resource book to use. We'll also have it electronically once we get it up and running so others can peruse this. But it's a way for us to, from administration, to be able to provide you with some of the information such as enrollments and other reports that you can have at your fingertips to be able to look at. So if the board members that were here before town meeting day, you remember we handed you out some things that were around transportation, enrollment, and all those. We're going to update those and get those to all of you to be able to put in this packet. So it just gives you a way to keep your resources together in one spot, and we'll assist you in doing that piece. And then I also wanted just to take a few minutes today to make sure that everybody kind of knew the structures of our district. And so current board members, you may know some of these things, but I'm going to encourage you to keep a curious eye. And so this is just I'm going to share my screen here, and I've provided that board, you have a hard copy of this, and I have some additional ones if somebody needs. They're also on our website under materials. And let me see if I can. All righty. All right, so this is just an overview really of our leadership structures and some of the major functions of the district. And so our mission in our district, this has been a long-running mission for us. This was actually the mission when I first came to this district, and I think it still continues to be a strong place for us to look at what do we want to do as a district. So we exist to nurture and inspire in all students the passion, creativity, and power to contribute to their local and global communities. This has been a driving part of our work for a very long time, and I think that it still holds true today. We took, a couple of years ago, we took that, the idea of creating a new strategic plan based upon our mission, and we started with our community and in identifying first our core beliefs. And so the core beliefs that came out of our work at that time were humanity, justice, community, and belonging, rigorous curriculum and instruction, well-being, transparent and responsible leadership, community engagement, and relationships. And so these core beliefs are the foundation for which we do the work that we do as a district. And our goals, our action steps are all built out of this. And so I want to use a phrase that I heard. Jim Knight is a kind of a guru of educational instructional coaching. And I heard him speak one time, and the phrase that he said in his work was, this is not who I am, but who I want to be. And I thought that is such an appropriate way to think about things like the core beliefs. Like, this is not necessarily who we are as a district every minute of every day, but this is who we want to be. And so I think it's a really great way to think about like what guides us and what guides our thinking. In our work around humanity and justice, we have a Humanity and Justice Coalition, Jen and Natasha are our co-chairs. Jen Miller-Arsenault, our Director of Curriculum and Instruction, and Natasha are our co-facilitators for this. And years ago, when this first got started as a group, there was a class that worked on what is our statement. And I'm actually going to read the whole thing for us one time so that we can really think about what does humanity and justice mean in our district. So the Washington Central Unified Union School District is dedicated to taking concrete actions that provide a safer and more supportive learning environment that is free of barriers, one that affirms the identity of each of us and acknowledges and celebrates differences to create a sense of belonging for each person connected to our schools. The school district is committed to creating inclusive educational opportunities that are relevant both historically and culturally, addressing the impacts of bias, prejudice, and discrimination while building more opportunity for us to thrive rather than merely survive. This statement represents a commitment within our school district to acknowledge and end oppression and oppressive systems, to center our full humanity of all our community, and to keep broadening our perspectives. These identities, including and not limited to race, color, religion, creed, national origin, ethnicity, marital status, family composition, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, varying physical and mental abilities, and socioeconomic status, carry socially constructed meaning and value. Our commitment is to the development of cultural humility and personal growth that is best supported in a climate that respects differences and provides a sense of belonging and inclusion. We have policies that are addressing this. We have procedures that address this. And we have a Humanity and Justice Coalition that works to make sure that we hold true to this, this statement. And so I encourage you to read this from time to time to remind us of our North Star around this work. And so I hope that it helps you understand as a district how committed we are to making sure that all of our students and all of our families feel a sense of belonging. From all of that work, we developed three large and big goals around our strategic plan, which was to build and nurture a culture of well-being and inclusivity, challenge, empower, and engage each student through evidence-based instructional strategies and curriculum and varied educational opportunities, and foster and commit to responsible leadership that engages the community and communicates transparently. And so these broad goals, we have lots of action steps within them. We share our strategic plan and the goals of that strategic plan and those action steps through a lot of the work that we do, and you'll see this many, many times over. So structurally, as you know, we have U32 as our 7 through 12 campus, and then we have the 5 elementary schools. This gives you a breakdown of approximately how many people and how many students there are. This is always a snapshot in time as to how many kids and how many staff that we have. But this gives you an idea of our current enrollment. This includes pre-kindergarten through 6th grade at our elementary schools. And it includes staff that there may be some staff that are counted twice in here because they might be at 2 locations. The district has 319 total staff members as of this snapshot. You'll see that if you added up all the staff in those buildings, that does not equal 319. Those are other staff that are part of central office as well, or central services. And so just to give you a quick breakdown of our structure, we use a lot of acronyms. I always get these wrong, whether they're acronyms or abbreviations or all kinds of stuff. Anyway, the COLT team is the Central Office Leadership Team. That's made up of the superintendent, the director of curriculum, instruction, and assessment, the director of student support services, the business manager, and the HR director. So that when we say the COLT team, that's the group that we refer to there. I'll get you through some other teams that we have that you hear about. Under the Director of Curriculum Assessment and Instruction, that's Jen Miller-Arsenault. She's giving you a little wave in the back. She supervises the instructional coach of the district and our operations manager, who does a lot of our data work. And she leads the Supervision and Evaluation Committee, the Curriculum Council, and co-leads that Humanity and Justice Coalition, as I said earlier with Natasha. That is by no means the limit of the work that she does, but it gives you kind of an idea of what she does for the district. A lot of curriculum work, particularly the Curriculum Council that you'll hear about from time to time. Our curriculum instruction and assessment is driven by some legislative actions. The Ed Quality Standards and Act 77 got things started. Act 173 expanded on that work. And so the work that drives, or the legislation that drives this is really our proficiency-based graduation requirements, which I put a note in there. Those are currently being revised by the AOE, and so we will be giving you reports as that continues. It also calls for personalized learning and flexible pathways. When I mention multiple pathways, flexible pathways, those are interchangeable words for us. And then under Act 173, it requires us, this act required us to have a coordinated curriculum, local comprehensive assessment, needs-based professional development, and educational support teams. And so that work falls under Jen's purview as our curriculum, our director. And so, so that gives you a little bit of that piece. The Director of Student Support Services, this is a lot of the special education services. That is Julia Pritchard. She is not able to be with us here tonight, but she regularly attends the board meetings. She supervises an assistant director, Kat Wheeler. You also may remember her as Kat Fair for some of you who've been. She works primarily here at U32 to do the special education work. There's also an evaluation team and support personnel for our schools. EEE is early childhood education, special education for our very youngest children. She's also responsible for Title IX. She is the district coordinator for Title IX, and McKinney-Vento, which is work that is done with homeless populations when students that are unhoused and their families that are unhoused, she has resources to help those students as well. Both of those, both the curriculum instruction assessment and the student support services really work through a model that's called multi-layer system of support. We typically call this MLSS, but this is kind of the way that we structure our instruction from the classroom level, the basic classroom level, where kids receive their first instruction, to a classroom teacher providing some additional supports. That's a second layer, to maybe an interventionist helping provide additional support, layer 3 or 4. And those are for when students have more focused needs or higher levels of needs to be able to learn the material. And so, so this is the way that we think about how we provide services to students as they have additional needs for learning, behavior, and all of those kinds of things. And so most of that work is held by those two people, the Director of Curriculum Instruction Assessment and the Director of Student Support Services. Then you have the finance and facilities side of the house. That's Suzanne Gann as your business administrator. And then in her purview, this is not everybody, but in her purview, Tom Hamlin is one of our financial accountants. Melissa Toller is our accounts payable. Patricia Canada, payroll specialist. Chris O'Brien is our Director of Facilities. Ron Schultz is our Food Service Director, and Dave Rogers is our Director of Technology. So Suzanne oversees the work of all of those departments. When we say facilities, we mean all of our buildings, grounds, custodial, all of that work. Ron, obviously, the food service piece of our district, and David, the technology. In our technology team, in addition to Dave, there are 4 people. Spencer over there running the show is our network infrastructure specialist and board manager and technology manager as well. We have Mike O'Brien, James Nichols, and Craig Marino who provide additional support for our entire district. And when you think about our IT, it's both users, equipment, purchasing, and I'm sorry you can't see that up there, but it's one of the most important things is cybersecurity. We have had a cybersecurity issue many years ago. I won't say more because it gives Jen bad feelings because she was the interim superintendent at the time. But it is a really important part of keeping our student data safe and our student systems safe as well. And so this is when you think of information technology, it covers a wide range of things for that group of people. Then we have human resources, Heidi Dimmick. She's back there in the middle. She is our director of human resources. Supporting her is Holly Poulin, who's our benefits specialist. And these are the folks that take care of labor relations, personnel administration, benefits, and recruitment. When I said we have 319 employees, what that does not count are all of the essentially itinerant employees that are coaches and substitutes and all of that. When you add all of them in, this was the number that shocked me. We sent out 525 W-2s this year, so people that did work within the district. And so when you think about that many people come through your HR program for them to get supports, benefits, and any of those kinds of things. So, this is a vital part of our operation. Also, just want to remind you of our budget development timeline. I know it's really, we just finished with it, but we want to make sure that you know that once we hit October, we're back in the game for all of that work. And so there's your timeline for that. And then when we make our decisions, and we'll talk a whole lot more in our budget training closer to when we begin that process, is we have a framework around ed quality, equitable distribution of resources, and our student needs, and we'll review that. And then just want to make sure that you know when we say the leadership team, that we call them the WCLT, that is both the COLT, the central office team, plus the principals, the assistant principals, director of student services, which is the position here at U32, the assistant director of student support services, that was the Kat Wheeler position, and then our director of IT and our community schools coordinator join us as well when necessary. And so when we say leadership team, these are the people that we refer to. So these are all of your principals and assistant principals as well. And so that is the structure. I could take any quick questions if you want. We'll talk more about board operations in the future, but didn't want to try to pile on too much at once for you. So any questions that I can answer?
Go ahead, Chris.
Stephen, when you refer to leadership team meeting, does it include all of these individuals or a subset of them?
So whoops, excuse me, I hit the wrong button there. So when you talk about this group right here is what you're asking?
Yeah, when you talk about having leadership team meetings.
So leadership team meetings, that's this group most of the time. Now, there are times where we bring together just the principals and the COLT team for some discussions, but when we say that a leadership team has met and worked on things, you're generally talking about this group of people. And I don't want to say that it's every time because it's not. Sometimes there are issues that are just elementary school, and so we would just have the elementary school principals, might have the director of IT and community schools with us for that. But when we say leadership team, these are the people that are a part of that team.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Any additional questions? So this is one early part of it. At our next meeting on April 1st, excuse me, from 5 to 6, there will also be an additional board orientation as well. The whole board is invited to that as the work of the board and reminders of the board and that. So, and that budget timeline, yes, the meat and potatoes work does begin in October, but we also, everything we're doing is around how are we fiscally responsible and doing the best for our students and our communities. So, all right, then moving on to our next section, which is the reports, superintendent report.
Yeah, so I would just highlight, there's a few things to highlight in there. At the top, we have our principal search update. So we are currently still searching for principal for U32. They have interviews tomorrow. There's a committee, screening committee, that is doing those first round interviews. And we're hopeful to bring to the board a candidate by the April 1st meeting is what we're working towards. Pretty tight timeline, but we do think we can meet that. We also, you'll see later in your packet, we have a retirement. I know it's early in the meeting to say it, but Gillian has submitted her retirement from Doty. We appreciate all of her service. We'll say more about her when we get to the personnel section. We are currently exploring what are the possibilities with this position. Right now, of course, is the possibility, is this a teaching principal position? I will tell you that we're having trouble finding a job description that's used anywhere else around this type of position, but we are certainly looking at that because the school will have approximately 50 students next year and 3 classrooms, and so a full-time principal is not required. But we also have some needs around math instruction, math intervention as well. And so we're looking at how can we maybe combine up those 2 needs into a single position. I don't have any more information than that because we're putting together the job description that we would bring to the board for you to approve, because it would be a new position. If we were to continue down this road. We're also going to work with the staff, and I was out there yesterday just talking to Gillian about some of the preliminary pieces of what we could do and what might be possible out at Doty. I wish I could give you a lot more information on that, but we're just in the earliest stages. But we are going to move as quickly as possible to fill the position.
Patrick.
Thanks, Stephen. When this kind of the teacher principal combo has come up in conversations, this is not the first time, but one of the hurdles that I've heard is collective bargaining issues. What's your solution to that?
So Patrick is nailing on the head the problem that we are having to explore. And so I don't, Heidi, what would be the best way for us to, we don't have a good example of it from any other district. So we've been calling all the other districts that have small schools and saying, hey, do you have this? What is this? And so we haven't gotten any feedback from anybody who has actually had this position. But what you're identifying is the position sits within both administration and within the teacher's contract. And so that is a difficult thing for us to figure out how to do. We have not had conversations. The reason I'm a little hesitant, we haven't had conversations yet with the association about what possibilities might exist. And that's our next step. Daniel.
Chris and then Daniel.
Thank you. Is it just a thought? Is it possible to have it as 2 separate positions and hire like a point whatever for the teaching part and then point whatever for the administrative part to address that issue? Just a thought. The other is that, you know, I think the issue of math instruction at Doty still weighs on a lot of people's minds, and I suspect yours too. If we are not able to find a teaching principal who has math cred for teaching math, would we look at a part-time principal, since a full-time principal wouldn't be needed, and then use the rest of that funds to hire math support for the Doty students?
So Chris was reading the script out of my head of, yes, those are, yeah, the little thought bubble. So that's exactly right. So we may have to split the position into 2 people, but part-time. There may be some other options as well that we might want to explore in terms of, do we need a shared principal? Do we need shared math instruction? There's some other things that we could look at as well in that process.
Daniel.
Yeah, I guess I just want to further clarify this. So I hear you saying, Stephen, that your preference at this point is for a teaching principal. That other scenario of 2 part-time positions being plan B. And I guess I'm curious why it's not plan A. Just because it feels like, yeah, there's an element of convenience, but it seems like intuitively the principal is a little bit more than a half-time position, if not a full-time position. And I'm curious about what the actual weekly hour need is for math instruction, because it feels like those two combined actually is more than 1.0 FTE to me, but I'm speaking without any firsthand knowledge.
No, Daniel, you bring up a good point, which was part of the reason that I met with Gillian yesterday, was to really look at what does the schedule look like and what does the need look like for this. I would say, I think we're very early in saying exactly what we want because we're still working with the staff there at Doty to determine what's best for our kids. And so I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but just say that we're looking at this. We hear, like, your suggestions are exactly the things that we're worried about right now, but I wanted to make sure that I was communicating to you and to the communities that this is on our mind. This is first and foremost what we need to make sure that Doty has both leadership and math instruction in whatever format will work best for us as a district and them as a school.
I do think historically, way back, it was that type of a position before at Doty, long ago. And I wonder, excuse me, Roxbury, before it closed, I'm wondering if it was in that type of position, just in terms of reference points. Doty would be too long ago. That life has changed greatly since that position was there, but do wonder about the Roxbury.
So we reached out first to Montpelier about what they had, and their principal was help provide some intervention services, but was not teaching a class. And so they didn't classify it as a teaching principal. Yeah. So thank you for that. I also put into the report some staffing and contractual deadlines. We are issuing our reduction in force notices here shortly. And we are working to get letters of intent out to our teachers. Our deadline is April 15th. We're shooting for April 1st on that. The reason we'll be issuing letters of intent is because we do not have a negotiated agreement for next year yet. We're still in negotiations. And so we don't offer a contract, we offer a letter of intent. That's to all of our employees because we are negotiating both our support personnel and our teacher contracts at this point in time. And we tie our non-bargaining contracts to the results of those as well. So that's why everybody will be receiving a letter of intent if they don't receive a reduction in force. We also have some reassignments that are going to be occurring within the district because of some of those reductions. We're making those known to people within the next week so that they know what's happening. And just want you to be aware of those deadlines for all of that. And then I provided a snapshot of the enrollment for our pre-K programming. And so I want to be really clear, this isn't even accurate as of today. This was when I put the packet out and what information we had at that point in time for how many kids we have pre-K 3, our 3-year-olds, pre-K 4, our 4-year-olds. Act 166 are students who register with us but attend a private pre-K program and receive, those pre-K programs receive 10 hours of funding for those students. And then I also put the kindergarten numbers for next year as well so that you could see those because as we have said, right now we are going to have 2 pre-K programs at Berlin, a morning and afternoon program at East Montpelier, a morning pre-K program at Rumney. All of those will have the ability to extend their days through our Community Connections program. And then we are going to have both our pre-K and kindergarten programs from Doty and Calais. Doty will attend Rumney, the pre-K and K students, and the Calais students, pre-K and K, will attend at East Montpelier. And you can see our numbers there. I put in that there are, for Calais, just to point out, there are 4 additional enrollments that are pending. There are additional pending enrollments now. We've updated our information. There are pending enrollments at East Montpelier and Middlesex as well. So I know that one of the community members said that there were more students at Calais. If we take our pending enrollments and our enrollments for both Calais and East Montpelier, right now they are the same number of students. There are 14 in each of those as of just today. And so I want to be clear, this is a number that continues to change. We get new enrollments each day. And so we're still seeing these numbers grow a little bit for us.
Daniel?
Sorry, I was trying to follow that. I thought you said that there were 4 pending enrollments at Calais,
Yes.
but you also said that there were 14 each, including pending at Calais and East Montpelier.
As of today, so back when this was done on 3/13, these were the numbers, and as of today, they are both have 14 with
So
some
we've had 4 added at Calais plus the pending 4.
correct. No, so at Calais you have 9 that have registered, 4 pending in this chart, plus we've gotten 1 more enrollment since this chart. So that's the 14 there. And East Montpelier is now 7 and 7. So 7 pre-K 3 and 7 pre-K 4. And those are, there are some pending ones within those as well.
Sorry, I was conflating kindergarten and pre-K. That was my problem. Thank you.
That's okay.
Ursula?
What causes a pending application to be pending or pending enrollment? Is this about our space or they just aren't?
They haven't submitted all of their forms yet. So there are health forms and there's proof of age forms. There's a whole list of forms that come in before a student can be officially registered. And so we just keep track of that as well. And I also made a little piece in there, like Worcester and pre-K 4, there's a one other placement. We have a student who attends a different pre-K program within the district. And so they've already been placed.
When do we open up placement? When do we open up the system to encourage families to tell us that they have?
I'm going to get Jen to help me on some of the dates here. She's. It was like January. Yeah. Push the bottom.
Okay.
Nope.
No.
Did. There it goes. We opened it at the very beginning of February. And we encourage families to get stuff in by mid-March when they can, but it takes a while. And there are a lot of requirements because remember, pre-kindergarten has to meet all the requirements for universal pre-kindergarten for the Agency of Education and all the licensing regulations for the Agency of Human Services. So we have a lot of paperwork that we need to collect. And we are tracking this pretty much daily to see what the status is, what our numbers are, but families can enroll late as well. The other thing, just so you know, for the total picture, we do try to offer the wraparound service through Community Connections when we can. We need to have a critical mass of students to make it economically viable for before care or after care. And the other thing that I would say is that we do engage in pre-K screening as a required child find activity in the spring. We're planning those dates right now. We try to strike a balance. We want our kids to be close enough to 3 because kids develop in leaps and bounds. We don't want it too early because if they're 2 or 2.5, that doesn't give us as great a picture as closer to 3, but we don't want it too late because then that's hard for families to plan.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I would just add in there.
Wait a minute. Daniel had his hand
Oh, I'm
up
sorry.
again. Daniel?
Oh, yeah. I was curious about whether it's feasible from a logistical point of view to have a pre-K teacher teach half a day at Calais and half a day at East Montpelier and cover both spaces with Community Connections as well. Feasible from a hours in the day perspective, a transportation perspective, a room availability perspective.
So, well, I'll do that backwards. Room availability is not an issue in our district. So we do have rooms available. But I would say that staffing is our major concern with this, is the staff has to be provided with lunchtime, planning time, and travel time in a situation in which they also have to cover for those hours, and that is too much time for a contract for us to be able to do that easily. I would also say being able to split our Community Connections. Community Connections has historically been difficult to staff. And so having half-time people at 2 locations proves very difficult, and they would have some of the same requirements around travel. Because, and their issue really is they're with the kids a little bit longer than the teacher is with them as well. And so being able to split our community connection staff so that there's full day options is extremely difficult for us to do. This also would have implications for before and after school care as well, because typically our community connections folks are able to help provide some of that before and after care as part of their contracts. And so it just makes it more difficult for us to be able to offer those services if we're splitting up people or only putting them there for a half day. And so there's, and I will just say that we're still in the registration time period right now and looking at, you know, what we have, and Community Connections is reaching out to each of these families as well to try to gauge their needs, because some families choose not to do a full day program. Some families need both the full day program before and after care. And so once we have a better picture of what our families need, then we're able to think more about our staffing as well for those situations. So we're still continuing to find out what our families need in terms of those additional services, not just the pre-K services.
All right.
And I'll just add, so the transportation piece on here is very preliminary. It just gives you an idea of what we're thinking right now, but this is still dependent upon all kinds of routes, and we're going to be surveying families here in the next month about who needs transportation. That'll give us a better picture of how many buses do we need and what kind of routes will we be running, and that would tell us that what kind of supervision we might need for kids to be able to get on buses at places like Calais.
Do you anticipate that the times or some other factor that's in here now would change?
Yeah, I think the times could adjust depending on the needs. And also at Calais, we have multiple buses. And so, so there's some supervision needs that we would have to consider there. But there's also making sure that the buses are all there about the same time so that we can transfer kids to one bus. Right now, we don't know if we'll need 2 or 3 buses for Calais because we haven't had signups yet for our families. And so those are still considerations for us.
This is off topic. It's on transportation topic, but off topic for the pre-K. Have we moved forward at all in terms of bus routes based on geography as opposed to town lines? No, we're looking at seeing where students are located in relation to a school as opposed to school town lines. We'd at least talked about that, I think.
So I know that we had that conversation, but we have not done a full study of bus routes geography-wise. We have looked at distances where our students live in terms of distances from schools. We have done some of that work, and so, but we have not done the other.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Anything additionally from the superintendent's report? And then the principal's report.
Yeah, we didn't have anything specific to highlight, but open to any questions, and we've got our principals are online if we have questions for them. And so I just wondered if there was anything that.
Does the board have any questions, comments that they would like to share? Floor.
I maybe would love to hear from either principals or from our superintendent, maybe if we could highlight a little bit what we're doing for absenteeism. And we all got an email from, I guess the Humanity and Justice Coalition got an email from Celia, but wondering if we could share a little bit about what she was saying there in the well-being and inclusivity.
Yeah, I'm not sure Celia's here.
Oh, okay.
She was not feeling well today, so
Okay.
I don't think she was able to make the meeting. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sorry about that, because that was we are doing some.
But I'm wondering if you want to share a little bit about it, Stephen, of how we are.
Yeah, so
working.
so you've heard the term chronic absenteeism used. Chronic absenteeism are students who miss more than 18 days, I think is the number of days that we have now. But really and truly what chronic absenteeism is students who are missing school any number of days. And so what we're trying to do through our community schools work is find ways to bring kids in to reduce barriers to attendance. And so some of that is having activities. So when you see Berlin, one of the things that they did was they had their circus performance. She talked about this at a previous meeting. And what they're able to track now is that, hey, they got some students in who hadn't normally been coming regularly and are reducing some of that absenteeism. And so I think these are great. I would like to say to the board is that absenteeism is something that we as a leadership team are going to really focus on, reducing that and having it as a regular report to the board so that you can see like what are the things that are happening in community schools work and just in the schools in general to be able to reduce those number of students that are there. And so, so seeing that drop, oh, Celia, you're here.
And yeah, that question that she put there was so great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm not gonna turn my camera on.
It's okay.
I've been sorry. I have my child was sick yesterday, and she lovingly handed it to me. So some of the work that we've been doing with chronic absenteeism, like Stephen said, is we're looking at reducing barriers to access. So we're really moving from compliance in that word of like truancy to connection. And so some of that looks like setting up individual meetings with students or families to address like what are the barriers. We've had some success with students setting up plans with their families, and we've seen dramatic increases. For our SST team, what we really did is we looked at, we're like, well, what did the circus do for our students? So we have about a third of our student population that could be considered chronically absent. And we ran a hypothesis where we said, what was their absenteeism rate in the 3 weeks before the circus? And then we looked at their absenteeism rate the 3 weeks after the circus. And that number before the circus was like 13-ish%. And after the circus, it was like 5.5, 5.6, something like that. So while we don't know for sure that was the cause, we can make some assumptions that the increased sense of connection and belonging and like deep engagement and work was something that allowed students to come to school and be ready to learn. So one of the things that the conversations that we're starting to have now are sort of how do we make school and the activities that our students are engaging in feel like the circus. We know functionally we can't have the circus come to school every day, but we want to build a deep sense of connection and choice and relevance to students. So we're going to continue to look at absenteeism patterns. We've done a lot of really big, deep data dives this year. So it's been a really exciting approach, and I'm thankful for the community schools lens on that.
I have one last question. I would love to learn more about the EduClimber during the PD session that was highlighted by East Montpelier. And I don't know if Alicia's here, but I feel it's a great thing for our community, especially right now in the release of data. So would that be okay to?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alicia?
Hi. Yeah, so Ellen Dorsey, our district coach, has been working in all of our schools to help teachers better understand and use EduClimber. This is our first year with this program, and we're really in the beginning stages of learning all that it can do. I've talked for many, many years about East Montpelier's data wall, and one of the goals that I had this year in working with Ellen is trying to figure out how to, so our data wall was on paper, then it went to Google, and now we are slowly turning it over into EduClimber. Some of that data is fed directly, like when students take district assessments like iReady or Acadiance Reading Assessment, those are just fed from Infinite Campus into EduClimber. We also have other assessments like homegrown, writing assessments and SEL measures that we use that we actually have to create ourselves in EduClimber. And Ellen has been working with us to do that. I would love to share with you maybe later this year when it's complete, what that looks like, so that you could just get a taste of it and see what it's been able to do for us and how we're able to look at data differently.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm wondering too, Alicia, are you doing a comparison between the two, too, so that there's more efficiency to a certain extent with EduClimber, but are you losing anything from your data wall?
That's a really good question. Diane, does your district use EduClimber?
No, they're using AimsWeb and different parts like that.
Yeah, so what I have found, there's something called forms in EduClimber that you are able to actually create your own. So if there is something lacking, and there have been a few areas, we can create something that very much mimics what we already had. And we've been using that for our EST process, for our EST plans this year. We've created a form that matches what we used in Google. Previously as a district. We're also able to create, we've been able to create some other forms that help us with more qualitative data, not just the quantitative data, and looking at our students more holistically. At this point, I will say there hasn't been anything that Ellen hasn't been able to help us create, which is exciting.
Yeah, and just for everybody, EST is the Educational Support Teams. It's a group of adults that come together when students have a learning or behavior issue to develop a plan for them and be able to provide interventions as a result. So just trying to draw some connections there for us. Thank you, Alicia.
I have a question. So is the number of chronic students going up, going down, stable, just generally over the last few years?
So over the last few years, it's been pretty stable, but that's not at a good spot.
Right.
We certainly saw an increase in chronic absenteeism after COVID. It has dropped some, but it is definitely holding in a percentage that is anywhere from 15 to 20% of our students have chronic absenteeism. What we want to do is really bring together a good report that can help us set some goals around this. And so that's one of the next steps that we're going to have from the leadership team.
Is the 15, 20% across the district, or is it concentrated in U32 versus elementary or anything like that?
No, it seems to hold true across the district, but it varies depending on the school. And so but we also want to dig deeper. This is an area, we report attendance in a variety of ways. And so one of the difficult features that we are seeing is that we pull some data and it looks like there's only 3% of our kids are chronically absent. And we pull another set of data and it's 22% or something like that. And it's really because we report attendance differently to the state. And so this is not uncommon to anybody in education right now in the state. And so what we're really trying to make sure that we do is define chronic absenteeism well and use our data appropriately to know when are kids missing and what are they missing. Because and a quick example is that a student at the elementary school may miss a full day of school and we call that absent, and a student at U32 may miss 2 classes and we don't call them absent for the day. And so they may have been chronically absent from a class, but they might not have been chronically absent from school. And so we need to be able to capture that data in a way that we can use it, share with you as a board so that we can talk about what are the things that we need to apply resources to reduce this. Community schools is one of our big levers right now to help reduce chronic absenteeism, and that's a lot of that work. And we'll share a little bit of like what that is in just a second.
Daniel?
Yeah, I was curious to what degree we engage parents about the determinants of chronic absenteeism for their kids, and like, is that part of the climate survey? Like, sort of self-reflection on a role, if any, that they play, and what could lower the barriers to school?
Yeah, I don't know if the climate survey in its current form gets to that piece, but I would also say that we're working on, and that's part of the goals that the board and I are working on together, to how do we provide a climate survey that gets to some of that information. We'll talk more about that when we talk about my goals. I think that's next week. I think Celia has an answer to some of that as well. So Celia, go ahead. I know this is about families, so tell them what we got.
So Daniel, really the best way for that to happen is for individual schools and teams. Like on our SST team, we'll look around the table, and I know that this happens in other buildings as well, but we'll look around the table and with all of us decide who's the best person to make contact. So while a climate survey may provide us with some of that information, the best way to move that forward in a building is about creating relationships and deeply understanding like what are the needs of the family.
Patrick?
Have our expectations of what chronic absent means changed since COVID? Because I asked that because I know a lot of people, or something coming out of the pandemic was that people are taking, not going to work or not going to school when they're a little bit less sick than they were 5 years ago, and I think that's a positive. And I wonder if therefore our expectations should change if Johnny stays home from school because they've got a little bit of a cough now, as opposed to maybe 5 years ago.
So I would say that yes, there probably are some changes around that, which is exactly why one of the things that we're looking at with our community schools is like the health center idea, and being able to involve our nurses in this. I know that the nurse at East Montpelier has really looked at how can she engage students in some of those discussions and their families, so that yes, stay home when you're sick, but if you're not sick, get to school. And so I think that that's the conversations that we're certainly having with our families. But yes, we don't want people coming to school sick, but we also want to make sure that they're there as much as possible, because every day that a kid isn't in school, they're not able to access all of our services and all of their learning.
I guess I had two sort of wonders, and one was, I know you're just starting to look at it, but I'd be curious if educational outcomes seem to be affected by this absenteeism. And I guess the other question is, I'm hearing about barriers to getting to school, but then also wanting to be at school. Is a barrier a lack of want, or are we talking about two different things?
Oh boy. So this will be a bigger discussion down the road. And yes, chronic absenteeism affects student performance, period. Like it's one of the better indicators of whether or not a kid is going to be successful long term. Barriers to education are varied. I mean, there's so many things. Some of the things that we're working on right now is food insecurity. For families that have that, students may or may not be able to attend school because their family is food insecure. Transportation has been some of that. There are things like that.
So I understand what a barrier might be. I just was wondering, like with the circus example, that sounded more about like, I would like to be there as opposed to I can't get there.
Right. So that's the other side of the coin, which is the sense of belonging, which I think is what the board.
So it's both.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah,
that was really what I was trying to clarify.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Clarify.
Any other questions, comments about the principal's reports? Thank you again for that detail that's in there. And exciting to switch to our student report.
All righty. Howdy. So first we'll start with congratulations to the middle school, some of the middle school students. We'll list them up in a moment, who have been selected to perform at the Winooski Valley Festival on April 8th. Congratulations to Lucius Hawks, Aubrey Gordon, Ezekiel Hamilton, Isabella McCullough, Elsa Young, Kian Takushig, Ibis Wayan, Sophia Brooks Hahn, Asher Swenson, Jasper Siegler, Ursula Lamb, Katie DeForge, Esther Hines, Caitlin Sibley, Revan Lowe, Nellie King, Carries Wood, Leela Christensen Polika, Alder Stefik, Sophia Summer, Bella Seminara, Hazel Dallows, Faith Herring, Maya Armbrister, Evelyn Brown, Brian Fleury, Sophia Adet, Eleanor Close, Ryan Young, George Farron, Josephine Marshall, Talia Killian, Gracelyn Smith, and Catherine Dodge, and I apologize if I botched your name.
Okay. We also just want to offer our congratulations to music teacher Ann Decker for being awarded the Vermont Music Educator Association's 2026 Music Educator of the Year Award. This is a huge accomplishment for her, so congrats. The U32 robotics team competed in the state championship this past weekend. All three of the teams had great competitions. Team 4946 earned an invitation to the New England First Premier event at the Eastern States Exposition in Springfield, Massachusetts. Tomorrow is Winter Thaw, an event filled with many activities and games for students to choose from, organized by the PEP Squad. These activities include an open mic, a volleyball tournament, and much more. U32 will be holding parent-teacher conferences this Friday. Any parents, even those who have older students, are encouraged to schedule a conference to see what is going on in our classrooms. In addition, the debate team went to Debate States this Saturday, and we would like to offer our congratulations to Samara Davis for getting the top speaker points and award this year. And we want to congratulate Elise O'Brien and Haley Sheehan for getting 5th place, and Samara Davis and Ava Batdorf for placing 2nd.
Okay, now on to sports. This Saturday, we had the boys and girls hockey matches, both who played great games and came in 2nd at the state championship overall. We also had the varsity boys basketball, finished with a record of 11-11, improving 8 wins over last year. The varsity girls basketball finished with a record of 6-15 overall. And the Nordic ski team had one of their athletes, Claire Serrano, get 1st in classic skiing, so congratulations to her. And the 2 principal award winners were senior Colby Tuller and senior Claire Serrano.
Hey, students, would you mind introducing yourself so that our new board members know who you are?
Yes, I'm Elise O'Brien, a junior.
I'm Catherine Stauffer, I'm a junior.
I'm Lady Groot, a senior.
Great. Yeah. Great.
Any questions for our students? I think there wasn't a mention about a certain celebrity that made it onto the news and with some pretty amazing basketball shots, so very impressive. Any questions? Thank you all. We're moving on to the community schools report, which is in your packet, page 13.
I'd like to highlight, so we have recently been awarded 2 grants from the Agency of Education through our community schools work. The smaller grant is designed to help provide training to students here at U32 to do internships, which will help develop our programming at our elementary schools, particularly starting with Berlin. And the second grant, which is the larger of the 2 grants, is a 5-year grant that is helping develop third space, really after-school programming, starting at Berlin with the support of those students from the first grant at U32. And so, so you're going to get more information as we start to develop these programs. We're early in the process, so we were just awarded the after-school grant just recently, and so there's a lot of planning that still needs to go into that. And they are just now starting to develop the training and the planning with a group of students, a design team of students and some staff around the work here at U32. And so what we're excited about is this is the beginning of us creating some additional opportunities for our students to be able to have after-school programming. And so from the board's perspective, these are grants. That's good because that gives us some additional funding to do this kind of work. And we also can start to integrate some of our community connections work as well to be providing some of these after-school supports at other schools. So the first grant helps get this program going for Berlin, and then we have to look at how do we get this work going at our other schools, using Berlin as our model for both bringing in the U32 kids to help support it, and then also being able to offer regular after-school programming. So when we first started all this grant process, we were looking at what was called a hub and spoke model. So the hub being U32, where a lot of the training and a lot of the support comes for kids to be able to help the students at the elementary schools and those other programs. The first spoke is Berlin. And so we're going to keep building those other spokes so that we eventually have a full wheel to this. But that's where we're getting started on all of it. And so big kudos, like this was some wonderful grant money.
Marty?
What were the amounts of the grant and how are they supervised or monitored?
Okay, so the first grant, the project track grant, I want to say it was around $140,000. And the center track, which is the bigger grant for 5 years, is like $750,000. I'll have to get you the exact numbers on that. I'm sorry, I don't have them memorized. So we actually just talked today about some of the supervision around that. So the community school coordinator, Beck Dezan, she's the one who actually wrote the report. She is our primary contact for doing the programming and all of that. The supervision will still come from principals and teachers and all of that, depending on who's involved with each of those programs. But Beck meets regularly, that's Rebecca Dezan, meets regularly with the central office team to update us on, okay, what's happening, where's it going, what other resources might we need, those kinds of things.
It's just grants I've been involved with in the past. You have to meet certain measures as you go through them, so.
Yeah, a lot of it is programming and number of days of providing that programming to our students is what the biggest parts of this grant.
Okay.
Zach?
For the 5-year grant that we're starting at Berlin, does that grant cover the expansion to the other schools, or is the grant just covering Berlin and then we have to figure out how we're going to expand it?
So this first grant covers just Berlin over those 5 years. So we have to figure out both what we can support and are there other grants that can support additional programming. So we're as I said, we're building it out. What we want is a good, strong model to be able to build out to our other schools. We'll still be able to provide some community connections support for other schools for after-school care and all those kinds of things, but not necessarily as robust what we call third space, right? All those other activities. We're still working on how do we build those out to the other schools as well.
Daniel?
Yeah. So I guess when you're sick in our home and off camera, you get to be the target for all the questions. But I had another question for Celia because I remember vocalizing my admiration for the previous work that Berlin had done for after school programs in collaboration with Beck. And I think it's awesome that they've done what they've done. And also I noted that it was teachers, Berlin faculty staying after hours to staff that programming. And that's amazing and super admirable, and also should not be an expectation to me that that staff and specifically teachers be staying after hours. So I was just curious if we had the rudimentary understanding of what staffing would look like, and are we going to avail ourselves of volunteers in addition to the U32 students? Because my assumption is that U32 students alone are insufficient accountability for after hours programming at schools.
Yeah, Daniel, if you don't mind, I can answer some of that because we talked about that just recently, is that within those grants, there's also adult support. So like a program director, which would be for, a limited number of hours, but be overseeing that time. And there's some site coordinator work as well as funds to help pay for adults to come in and do unique training. So I think it was 6 weeks at a time. Am I right with that amount of time? So they were looking at like 6 weeks chunks of time, and could they bring in with some stipend money, being able to pay them some adults that could bring their talents to those students in that after school time and be supported by the students from U32 who would also be getting paid to do that work.
I wanted to just mention, I'm not overlooking the time that the principals put in, and I'm aware of how much time Jared Callis puts in after hours. So I do acknowledge all of that. I'm sorry if I didn't mention that sooner.
Any other questions, Chris?
Yeah, Stephen, do these grant funds, tell me again what schools they'll be dedicated to?
So U32 has one of the grants, and Berlin is the other.
Is that the $140,000 one?
About $140,000 to do the programming at U32, and about $750,000 for Berlin over 5 years.
Over 5 years, okay. Is that money, is it duplicative of money that is currently coming from the district to support services at Berlin? And the basis of my question is whether that provides an opportunity to leverage resources to other schools that are under-resourced.
No, this is not funding that was there's no funding that the district was providing for this kind of work at either of the schools. So this is new programming supported by the grants.
This is, don't take this as a negative. It's a 5-year program. Are we going to take steps to either find other grant funding for continuation beyond 5 years? Because I think some of the difficulties we run into is having grant positions that then become pulled into the general budget, and we're not great about stopping because it becomes embedded in what we do. But is there a mechanism for being wary of that for future budgets?
So, Chris, you bring up the sustainability question that we're going to have to work on over these years. I will say we don't have the plan for that at this point in time, but certainly anytime we are implementing this kind of after-school programming and work, we do want to be able to sustain it because we do feel it's important. I know Celia has her hand up because she's got some response to that as well, I'm sure. Go ahead, Celia.
Yeah, I think that I just want to clarify the goal of the grant is to provide comprehensive after-school programming. And by that, it's really like extended day programming. So making sure that there are curricular connections, that we are building that idea of like deep belonging and understanding. Like we know sometimes students will come to school during the day if there's the cool STEM activity after school. So we want to ensure that that's the goal of the programming, is to build that model out so that we can say to another school, this is how you might model this, and maybe even potentially model it through our current community connection system. The Act 78 money is money that has been around for a little while, and it doesn't appear to be going anywhere. So that was one of my questions when we were applying was, well, what happens at the end of 5 years? We can certainly apply for additional Act 78 money at the end of the grant cycle to add in the other schools, or there are other avenues in which we could continue to support it via grant funding.
Lay?
So Chris kind of asked the question for me, but I want to ask the question is, I guess, so looking at the outlook of budgets, just general budgets and all that, and looking at the outlook of our education system, do we really believe in this enough to pursue something that we can't guarantee the outlook of it after the 5 years? So we'll run it for 5 years, and if we can't find a way to fund it, we close it. Then that just feels like, I know it's a grant and I know it's not the taxpayer money from the general fund, but still, do we want to pursue something with funds that we cannot guarantee later on? It seems kind of, for a lack of a better term, dumb to try to go for something that we can't guarantee later on.
I noticed Celia has her hand up, and then Zach.
I think I would just note that this is a really amazing opportunity for our students and families and for our district as a whole. And I recognize what the unease that can come from grant funding. But the reality is it was a highly competitive grant, and we were really, really, really lucky. Berlin had not had after school care in our building for the last 5 years. Just this year, we ran a pilot at the beginning of the year, and now we have we have after school care with community connections. This is a grant about building out some comprehensive after school programming. So it's a really great opportunity for our communities and for our students. So I am thrilled, and I hope that you all join us in that excitement.
Zach?
I think it's also important to remember that, kids take things 1 year at a time, and especially for our elementary school kids, that's 5 years is a real long time. And so even if we can't keep it going, we've benefited kids for the time that we have. And I'd rather take that risk. I think sometimes this district can be very risk averse. Rather take that risk knowing that the upside is that we get 5 years of benefit, and the downside is that potentially go back to the status quo, which is where we'd be if we didn't take the risk at all.
Floor.
I think what I would say for people that are concerned about the money or that is that it is an evidence-based program, and we not have the data in our district, but it's an evidence-based program. And I think anything that is going to transform our schools into not just a local hub, but like Celia was saying, we would be integrating academics, we would be integrating third space, we would be integrating hopefully health services, and are really the specific needs of our communities, right? This is coming from what we're seeing. And I can tell you, without saying names, of specific situations where we have people in and within our district that might not speak the language, for example, or have just one car in their family, and the ability to have this after-school programs and to have this exactly what we're talking about, and the excitement about this grant, I can't even, I don't know, I could jump up and down right now. What it means for a lot of our families, that is not necessarily the families that are choosing because they're going on vacation to not bring their kids for, I'm like trying to tie everything up. This helps us also for the chronic absenteeism too. So I think that there's data, may not be data here, but it's money well invested that will return to us, and it will return for our staff too. It's not just for our children.
Yeah.
I guess my concern is not the money, just because we know it's the grant. It's also the effort in there, and then also the thing we're talking about, that benefit that's going to happen, and if we see that the evidence is there, then it's plausible that it is a good thing. But one thing that I think Chris kind of points on as well with what he said earlier was the money eventually will, and what I said earlier is the money will eventually go away, and the benefits that we get and the needs that our community have won't go away ever. So we might be having this little bit of benefit for this little amount of time. In the grand scheme of things, a little bit of time for those 5 years. And then the effects from us stopping that because we can't get any more funding will be potentially astronomical. And that's, I think, where I worry a little bit towards the end of the 5-year outlook. I mean, for us, that's a long ways away, but still, that's kind of something that we have to look at, especially with something this big.
You're highlighting, as Stephen was saying, about the sustainability about it. And the sustainability doesn't mean just the cost. The sustainability means how do we even lessen the impact? So say we have to wean off, so to speak. But the amount of, part of the structure of my understanding from the U32 part of it too, is that there are training components that are going to enhance skill levels of those who are doing it as well, which will continue to expand and grow out from that. You know, there's been a lot of community school work being done for decades, and often money runs out. My school district, the money did run out, but then it transitions into something else. Life does change, but what you're highlighting are those levels of sustainability that we need to keep in mind and go and plan for so that it's more intentional.
But then I guess the thing is that will that eventually, like as you said, that eventually become something else, but then that brings up the same concern that Chris had at the beginning, is like sometimes we add those things later on to our budget, and our budget is already constrained enough. So that's just kind of.
Dan had his hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to add, you know, I think, Lei, you asked good questions. I think it's a prototype, not a prototypical, it's a classic case of like a really worthy pilot project. Pilot projects exist to experiment with things and to see what works well for your district. In my mind, and sort of piggyback off of what Diane said, like there are long-term benefits that make this exceed the costs alone, and then the short-term benefits of being able to trial something like this, we can then extrapolate and extend to our other elementary schools. It's obviously to me a no-brainer, and I'm really glad we're going forward with it. I guess one thing I want to talk about or think about maybe as a future agenda item is thinking about this. It's outside the scope of community connections, but we treat community connections in our budget work as an enterprise, and I want to think about a way the board can be more responsible and more involved in evaluating the cost effectiveness and benefit of our enterprises, and also what does supply look like for our enterprises in terms of staffing availability and expertise and skill building, and then what does demand look like in terms of enrollment in different aspects of this, and also sort of enthusiasm and willingness to pay, I think, is another component, because I think down the road we might have to look at potentially like a sliding scale for things like extended after school. If we really want a robust program, there are going to be additional costs, and we do have to think about sort of what that might look like. And when I'm thinking about these enterprises, I'm not just thinking about this and also community connections, but then also the concept of having some kind of partnership with early childhood ed or specifically child care in our schools, and what all those things could look like. I think we need to come up with some kind of rubric for how we evaluate these and the district. I don't feel like we get our hands into that as a board enough. And we have all this extra time all the time, and we have no extra time, but it feels worth consuming.
And speaking of extra time, I'm going to suggest we move on, that it's been a great discussion, great points that have been brought up that I think we need to keep on that, on our thoughts. But we'll move into the next part is the Humanity and Justice Coalition report. There isn't one in the packet, but I didn't know if Natasha or Flor wanted to speak to that.
Sure. So I guess I'll just talk briefly about what we've kind of been doing most recently. The last meeting, we had some conversation about feedback from the 20th in-service, and we got really positive feedback. One of the comments was, this is the best PD ever. People felt it was collaborative, it was evidence-based, it was practical. They could apply it to their teaching. There was inspiration and validation through artifacts, and they really appreciated the student voice that was brought in. And some of the kind of takeaways from that is, how do we bring more student voice in, especially from elementary schools, and making sure we're getting really a cross-section of students. So we're getting students from all different pathways, all different types of interest groups, so we can really hear from all of our students. We also heard that educators were looking for additional resources for how to handle uncomfortable situations and facilitate difficult conversations. So I think that's probably something that we'll discuss with our work plan moving forward. And in terms of addressing more student voices, one of the things that we are working on now is having students become co-facilitators. So they would co-facilitate with adults, help create the agenda, help facilitate the meetings, help develop the work plan. We really want to make sure that we're not just paying lip service to student voice, but making sure that students are actually participants in this process. And we found that this year that when students have participated, it's really enriched the conversations that are happening, and it's bringing in some really incredible perspectives. And as the feedback from the 20th in-service stated, our educators realize that in some capacities, those students are the experts, right? Like, we're in the business of making sure our students can be successful. So if we're not hearing from our students about what that looks like, are we really able to do the job that we need to do? So we're going to continue to work on that. We were supposed to meet tomorrow, but because of thaw, I don't know what the title of it is. We are rescheduling because we don't want students to have to pick between the fun activities that are happening and coming to our meeting. But the next meeting is around that purpose of creating student co-chairs that could be a part of this.
Okay. Any questions for Natasha?
Did I miss anything, Jen?
Great, thank you. And this will be a regular report that we will have the opportunity to learn more about. The Career Center report. Who's doing that one?
I don't think they've been to.
Right.
Remember,
apparently that would be myself, but I have nothing to report. I think the first meeting is next Tuesday that I'm going to be attending, so I would imagine next meeting I'll have a lot more fruitful updates for everyone.
Great, thank you.
I can add something, Diane.
Yes.
Just there is a subcommittee of the Career Center that has been doing work on the envisioning program. We're waiting for some cost estimates that actually just came in this week. So that work for the future of the Career Center is still at its work, and the committee is going to meet this week.
Great, thank you, Flor. VSBA report, would that?
Yeah, so I do have a lot, but you guys, because now I get to talk a little bit more about this. You guys received an update, so I'm not going to go through the entire update, but there's 4 bills, 4 things that are going on that I would like us to be aware of. And I'm going to start with what we were talking. I'm not going to go through the town meeting overview, but I am just going to say how thankful we are to our communities for helping us pass the budget. And it's been, that's been a huge thing. There's a report there so that you can see there was just 19 towns that did not pass. Our friends and colleagues in Barrie are working really hard right now to pass their budget, and we should all be thinking about that because they are the less spenders. Act 73 implementation, there's a lot going on in the State House, spending a lot of time there. The district governance maps, the Collin, what we're calling the Collin map, which is in the Education Committee, hasn't moved. There's a little bit of a freeze on, not a freeze, but crossover has been extended for education, for the education part. So you can go more into detail if you click in your update. But what I want to say is that he's proposing 27 larger school districts across the state, and it's all at the district level. As you know, we have SUs and SDs, so that part has been a little controversial. His committee is all over the place, and they're having a hard time coalescing in how to move forward. The Bungers map, who's going on at the Senate level, has a combination of 45 districts as well as 12 SDs. So, and then the proposal still retains that local governance and is really, in my own bias opinion, it's a little bit more related to choice than it is related to student outcomes, if I'm being frank with you. But I would encourage you to look at that. What is most important to me that you look at is the VSA, the Vermont Superintendent Association, presented a really solid proposal. And the proposal is really not a new proposal, but it's like a compilation of all of the things that they had been previewed to. So there's a slideshow that I'm not going to show, but it's really a good way to not necessarily be thinking about maps, but be thinking about creating the conditions for those voluntary measures, leaning a little bit more in the task redistricting task force report, and also acknowledging that there's some smaller things that we can do for lowering tax for our communities, because as we all know, in governance, there's not going to be a lot of savings, and what our communities are looking, our taxpayers are looking, is to lower that tax. The presentation, it would take too long to go over this right now. We had our meeting with our VSBA board, and the entire VSBA board of the 11 regions stood by the proposal. Stephen was part of that group, is my understanding. From all the superintendents are in agreement with this proposal, so it would be important for you guys to look at it. The Act 73 remains uncertain at this point. And as you know, the map is sort of the one thing that they are waiting to move forward with the foundation formula. The foundation formula is one of the biggest things, especially the Chitin community is going to come. I don't know if they came today, but how it would affect their communities, because they are already districts that are at scale and they have a lot to lose, even with the foundation formula as it is right now. The other part that we should be paying attention to, not paying attention to, but the PCB's testing in Vermont, it has been halted. This is an effort there, and it's mostly because there was no money. The statewide requirement, as you know, because we've been affected by this, so this would, H 542 would terminate the statewide requirement on Vermont schools continue testing while maintaining authority and funding to address remediation in schools that contamination was already been identified. There was a lot of testimony. The bill had the third reading just yesterday. I'm forgetting my dates now, March 17th, yesterday, when we were at the House, and it did pass, so it's on halt right now. There's no more testing, but it also means there's no more money for us that we know our results. The other thing is the H802 that adjusts the special education census grant for inflation. So H802 will receive Act 173 to ensure that Vermont special education census grant be indexed to inflation on an yearly basis for next year, that is 2027. And the Act, as written, inadvertently sunsets any inflation adjustment to end in 2026. So based on that, the House Ways and Means on March 10th, they did a technical correction, and so this would be folded into the EO bill instead of being part of the H802. And I know that sounds confusing, but it is really important for for us too. And then the last one that there's a lot of the licensure of early child educators, another one, but the education spending gaps would be the last one that I would go over. There's a lot more for you to look at it, but we've been following that really closely. And as we had talked about before, it limits the growth of school district per pupil education spending for the fiscal year 2028 and 2029, tying that allowable increase to the defined allowable growth percentage based on the prior year's spending. The proposal is intended to, it's like an interim measure because to restrain that education spending. And we thought that it wouldn't move forward, but it's, you know, it has had a lot of, received a lot of political support from some of our state leaders, including the governor, as you know. And so they're really trying to limit the education spending growth as part of the broader tax relief. So on March 13, Senator Chittin presented an amendment. I'm not going to go through all of it, but it is still live. The amendment passed 5-2, and the amendment is really lowering that excess spending. So it's not necessarily favorable to us. It is better because there's a provision there that holds harmless a certain part of it, or no? Yes,
Yeah.
there's a, so, but it's not necessarily, it's still a cap. I'm looking, and I was not there on the 17th when they did the last. And then the last one I promised is the immigration protocols in Vermont, just because you guys probably all saw what happened in South Burlington. S227, Superintendent Wilmer Chavarria did a great testimony. There's a link in the update if you guys want to look at it. The Attorney General office is going to be in charge of writing the protocols for this, and basically is that we'll adopt a formal policies governing how schools personnel respond to federal immigration enforcement requests, including protocols for when immigration agents seek access to school grants or student information. We had a brief conversation about this at our labor management committee last week. I can't even remember. Yeah, last week. But the bill has moved out of committee, and that is and the last thing in that update is also there is a link for chronic absenteeism webinars from the Early Day Counts team at UVM. This is an effort from all of Vermont Child Health Improvement Programs. They've been working really hard on this, that Every Day Counts. That's it.
Can I add one thing? So I think that one of the bills that we want to keep a close eye on is certainly the threshold change. Since we are very, very close to the threshold with our current spending, that could have one of the most significant impacts on our budgeting going forward. I know that Flor mentioned that it's a hold harmless part of it. It's not that harmless to us. Because what the spending threshold is 118% of the average spending, or I forget what that number is called, the current year's. Yeah, so we can't spend more than 118% of what we had. That's lowered in this legislation to 112% or 110%. That would be, if it were lowered to 112%, that would have reduced our ability to spend by $1.6 million for next year. And if it went to 110%, it'd be 2.4 million. So 2.4. So below what we are currently spending. So it is very much a bill to keep an eye on, because the threshold is the way that they're going to be trying to cap spending in districts, and we spend right up against the threshold. So it's very important to watch that.
Lane.
I guess this would be a question for either you or Suzanne, would be, is that number where we can't spend 110, 118, or 118 right now, is that based off of the budget that's currently passed, or is that based off of last fiscal year's budget?
The currently passed budget will determine how much we can spend in the next budget cycle. You brought up another point. I can't remember. I've already lost my train of thought. It'll come back. Thanks.
It's based on a statewide number too.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Floor. Yep, Blaine.
Could you explain that a little bit more? Sorry. What do you mean? Okay.
All right. So now we're moving into board operations. I would ask if we could take a 5-minute break.
Sure.
And that. So it is 8:03. We will come back at 8:08. Right, it is 8:09. So people come
Recording
back.
in progress.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, it Randolph Tech too when I was there.
We are moving into the board operations, which has discussion and some action. The first item is the budget process reflection. So thoughts that people would like to share around our sense of next steps, so their sense of how it went and what important things we'd like to share. Did you have any, Stephen?
What? Oh, sorry. Did I have any reflections on the budget? Yeah, it was a tough one. So I would just say first, kudos to Suzanne. So what we essentially did this year was we prepared 6 budgets, which is a lot. That's a lot more than we've typically done. And so I think that having it coincide with configuration work was obviously difficult for us because we were having to try to produce multiple things. I would also go back to our processes for trying to equitably distribute funds. I think we continue to refine that. We continue to get feedback, but I do think that it is a good way for us to look at what are our student needs and how do we meet those needs in our funding process. And so I certainly think that there's room for us to grow, as there is in any of our processes, but we do feel like we were funding schools in ways that were equitable to the needs of those students.
Thank you, Stephen. Other reflections on the process? Patrick?
Yeah, something I heard from community members a couple of times along the process, and this was certainly complicated by what you just said, Stephen, the fact that we were doing multiple budgets with multiple timelines or with multiple paths, was that it was difficult to know which was the most recent or current budget, which was the one, which draft was the budget that reflected the most information or the most current information. And so the conversation that I've had with it would be helpful if when the stuff was posted on the website, while we preserve all the history because it's important, to have something, very obvious, blinking, newest version, something that makes it very clear to anyone that this is the most recent, and I think that would help with some of the concerns that our community kept raising in the process that we had answered, but it wasn't clear where that answer was. So there's a suggestion for next time. I'm not. Are we? I'm sure. Is this our chance to kind of air all this stuff, or are we gonna have another? When we start the next budget process, will we have kind of a chance there as well?
Well, I think we'll also have it in our retreat.
Okay,
sure. And in our budget build, when we start talking about building the budget and doing some of the training. I think one of the things that I recognize too in the process is how can we help our community know the budgeting process better? Those who really want to dig deep into it. And so some early ideas is like how do we provide a little bit of training that is kind of parallel to the board work for our community, and even some students, if they were interested, to be able to say, here's the inner workings of some of this, because it is a complicated process. I mean, and so I think that would help some of our community members that want that kind of detail.
Other reflections? Marty, and then
I just wanted to mention that outside of the board, there are a lot of community members, particularly in the 2 towns that were maybe going to lose their schools, that worked very hard to make sure that the budget passed, because the basic sense of most of the people who wanted to keep the schools open was that by making the budget fail, they would get a new budget that would fund the schools. So a lot of community members worked really hard to make sure that the budget passed.
Thank you, Marty. Zach?
One of the conversations that I had a few times in the configuration work, and particularly in conversations that I had in Calais, were around the question of like, what was it like? Why didn't we put out a budget that showed what it would have really cost to operate 5 schools, at a level that we were proud of? And I sort of the way I think about that process, I think that there was sort of a case of there were 3 things that were on the table. There was having a school in every community. There was having tax rates at least somewhat under control, and there was having really high quality education. And it felt like we were in a situation where we could kind of choose 2 of them. And I feel like we kind of took the tax rate question off the table. And I wonder if I've really gone back and forth on whether that's the right call. I don't know if it was. I think at the time, and I think I still sort of believe that it wouldn't have been anyone's benefit to put forward a budget that we thought would fail for potentially performative reasons. But I think we also ended up saying, not being honest with our communities about what it was really going to cost to do things well, and sort of had this we can send the bill to the kids, a bit. And I'm not sure if it was the right decision to say we're going to really stop at the excess spending threshold if we don't think we're going to be able to do an adequate education in 5 elementary schools at that level.
Other reflections? One thing that I would I'm sorry, Flor. Go ahead. One reflection that I had is as also part of community engagement and communication moving forward too, is to better understand the work that has been put in since the budget has passed as a 5-school model, and for us to better have a good understanding of the work that's going in right now as planning for instruction is occurring, and what does that look like, and with everyone having the multi-grade, what does that look like? Not to second guess necessarily, but to ask the questions and to better understand, so that we understand fiscally what is going on, which I think will then frame a better road for us to already be engaged in that conversation. And so then when we're asking potential questions, I feel I'll be better informed as to what we're looking at when we're saying where the needs are. So for me, it's part of what we begin now with our community engagement and conversations to better understand the instruction that is occurring now, and also those areas that we may be hearing are challenging because of our fiscal constraints that are occurring. Flor.
I think to add to that, I would just say that after going through this budget process for several years with all of us, and now that we're a new board, essentially, because every year we're a new board with new members, is to also use this opportunity we keep saying that we do year-round budgeting, and I think this year more than ever, we're going to have to be thinking in that way through the Finance Committee especially, but spend a little bit of time for both the community and for us, because we're going to be doing board learning, to really defining our roles. And I think it came up in our board evaluation tour, but the self-evaluation that we did, to spend some time so that the community also understands what we do and what we don't do, and what our roles are, and also for us to learn, continue to learn and apply. And I know that this is really hard, but at certain points through our budget decisions, we do not always listen to the experts in the room. And sometimes we tend to, and I'm just saying this, like, frankly, like, I'm not criticizing anybody. I'm just saying, and learning for us to continue to learn and leaning in that sometimes it's really easy to make a temperature decision. And if we spend a little bit more time, and that's going to have to do with, you know, how we approach this year. And we, like Stephen was saying, being able to have information ahead of time for the board to discuss to more detail would allow also for both the board and the public to understand where we are. So how do we keep leaning in all those processes and systems that we have set for everybody to better understand our role, which I know is part of the planning that you guys are doing with the professional learning. And the last thing I would say is that it would be great to spend, while we are doing budgeting and even before, spend some time in celebrations of what we do already in school, because I think there's a misunderstanding of what we do or not do at school, but spend some time sort of celebrating what we're doing or learning about what we're doing, which we try to do through the Ed Committee, but sometimes it's things like that get lost. Like, you know, for example, having a celebration from Ann Decker that just won the award, and then have it like different things like that we can maybe, now that we won't be so bogged down by just configuration conversations, trying to lean into being together in community, more understanding each other without just the budget, just celebrating what we do well, like the 2 grants right now, like celebrate. I don't know, that's.
Other reflections? Because I think that part of the conversation too goes into that communication and community engagement around how we structure up some of those experiences and what those look like, which typically are that first Wednesday meeting of the month. And so, you know, I have shared a variety of times my hope or ideas for how we might structure it, and plan to work with both Stephen and the steering committee around what that might look like. And so to me, it is my hope to have more dialogue, more opportunities for us as a board to hear from everyone. I've heard from you know, some different people, concerns that are continuing to go with the structures or the instruction that they want to be sure that that sense of urgency about how time is fleeting for kids, and how are we planning for that, as that conversation doesn't stop. It may not look like configuration conversation, but how do we ensure that we are doing the best for all of our students in whatever model we have? So I think the best way for myself, certainly as a board member, is to have these community dialogues around the opportunity to hear, like you're saying, Flor, the celebrations, and also to be looking at it with full open eyes as to where our areas of need and what's really within our locus of control as well. So was there other information that we wanted to talk about during the communication and community engagement portion? And that I do know I need to set up a time to meet with the communication committee, and so we'll be sending that email out since several members are actually are online. And that, Chris?
Yep. One of the vital parts of communication, I think, is the public comment, primarily before the meeting, because I think at the end of the meeting we don't have much public comment. I think we should have a discussion on how we want to see that structured. I would hope we would move the time and have more time, and maybe set a specific amount of time, maybe 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and then depending upon the number of members of the public who want to speak, expand up to maybe 3 minutes of time for them to speak. And also just engage with dialogue as opposed to sitting and being spoken at as a spoken with. You know, there's a difference between at and with, and I think it would be more informative for all of us to have a with conversation and public comment as opposed to just an at one. And so I think as a board we should have that discussion and put it out for a future agenda item, so we can weigh the pros and cons of that and see where the board as a whole stands. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. And to that end as well, I see your hand, Daniel. I'll come to you. To that end as well, it is my hope that by opening up the dialogue at the first meeting of the month, that that's also the opportunity for that to occur, so that it doesn't, you know, we're hearing from the community on an ongoing basis, and our community knows that that's where also like the dialogue can happen. But I hear what you're saying about having it on the agenda, on a future agenda items for a board discussion. Daniel and then Ursula.
Yeah, I guess what Chris said sort of jogged my mind to the idea of like offering or developing like a one-pager for the public to understand. You know, basically, you know, ways the board might redress your grievance. You know, basically, what type of public comment might elicit a direct factual response? What type of comments might have to basically be tabled, or you might have to get more context from the board before you could answer them. I think the communications and engagement team is sort of the place where something like that could be developed, so people understand, you know, why what they expect might not be what is possible for us to deliver in that moment in terms of a response.
Thank you. Ursula?
We should probably consider building in a reflection to community engagement and communication so that we can evaluate who we've given information to, like who's getting the information and what are the groups that we're missing, and then figure out what are the barriers to those groups and how do we reach them.
Thank you. Dave?
Being new, I don't really know why this is, but I've seen in other boards where there's maybe at the beginning of the meeting, there's a general public comment not related to an agenda item, but then frequently there's sort of like, well, there's going to be action or an ongoing thing that's leading to an action. When that discussion happens, you sort of have public comment focused on that item. So you don't have people talking about, you know, finances when you're talking about, you know, something else. I don't know if that might help people feel like they were speaking to an item more, and maybe allow a little bit more. It might lend itself more to the interaction that sounds like you're after a little bit, but also keeping it focused, because if you hear 30 minutes of public comment on everything that there is, it's hard to kind of maybe take that in where it was focused on an item.
Thank you. Other comments about comments? Floor.
Just in communications where we were, I just wanted to add, and I think Daniel brought this up, we talked about maybe getting some time to talk about more of a district coordination. So if we could add some, and I know we don't have any money, but add somebody to central office that could help us be more intentional in our communication. And I know that Stephen probably has some ideas, but just so that we are, you know, right now we're still in our reactive mode and we can be more intentional, sort of that goes to reactive, and he has limited amount of time in his day. So I just don't know if that's something that we can look at it sort of more holistically, because I think the board keeps complaining about communications. We do have a communication committee, but I think if we could, and I think it would be too much to put on top of what Sashley will be also doing, but that is for Stephen to decide. But can we just make sure that we are gonna, if we're gonna ask for more, also support our central office in that effort?
Yeah, I would say I would add it to, we'll initially discuss it, Stephen, we'll add it to our agenda. And I think that, you make a good point too about the communication committee taking a look at all of this as well and making some plans as to next steps and who these conversations go with as to next. Marty?
Yeah, I mentioned this to you before, but do we have a process for a front porch forum, like your letter? I read it in Middlesex, but it wasn't in Worcester. because Ursula would put it in on Middlesex. And do we have some kind of process so we can get that out to each one of the front porch forums for each town?
Yeah, it goes through, so, and that was an unusual one because typically there won't be comments only coming from me. It will be in support, but I wanted to get that one out. So typically, once the communication committee comes up, finalizes something to go out to Front Porch Forum, it gets sent to the steering committee, which has somebody from each community on it. And so that is the plan. That doesn't mean that things won't fall through sometimes. I know I've been traveling at times and I don't get it right away.
So should I post it to Worcester?
Natasha, do you know if it went in Worcester?
I haven't seen it.
It did not.
That's fine.
Put it up there.
Okay. All right, okay. Then board learning, Stephen mentioned that he and I met with Debbie from VSBA, who is helping to structure up some board learning and that. So we shared some materials with her. We're going to take a look at the differences in our role as governance and that, and she will help walk us through some different scenarios. I asked if we could get a little bit of time under our belt, and so we are looking for it's May 6th. May 6th that we will have it, so there will be more information coming in that regard. We always do a little bit of board learning along the way anyway as we go, but this will be a specific focus. Excuse me. And then in terms of our new board members, as to, following up with you all around mentors and that. So have you connected with anyone yet that okay, so Dave said, Andrew, have you? Okay, we'll follow up with you. And then Marty, you have, and that. So that's great. The other thing is we do want to beef up those blurbs on our website. So please be in touch with, I assume, Sashley, and that, and we can always, all of us have our phones with us. So here's your warning that if there's not a picture already provided, then we'll be taking a lot of selfies at our next meeting so that we can beef up that whole website and that. So that's that part. And board self-evaluations, I want to, for those who have had the chance to read through them, if there's anything you noticed that you wanted to highlight, we will make sure that there is time at our next meeting that we will be able to talk more in depth of it so that you've had time to read and process the different parts. It is also posted on the website, right, Stephen?
Yes.
Yes, and that, so the public can also see it as well, and that. So was there anything anyone noticed and wanted to mention tonight? Ursula?
And I'm looking at the handout we were given where it talks about having 16 responses. But when you look at the raw data, there were 20 board member responses, which was interesting given that there were 14 of us until recently. So I was curious how we distilled it down to 16 responses for this versus what was actually in the raw data.
Well, I think it's 62% of those 16 were board members.
Right, but what I'm saying is if you look at the raw data and you count the number of board member responses, there are 20 of them. And we are a 15-member board who, until recently, was only 14 members. So clearly, things were duplicated, or people responded more than once.
All right, who did it? So I will check with Sashley in terms of the Google Doc and looking at that, so. Yep. I would think there should be some way to potentially, but any other things that stood out?
Yeah, I think I counted the same. I was saying to Ursula that we were coming in, I counted 19, but I think she's right, there's 20. I think the data is still, some people might not have moved from board member to other, because it went also to leadership, so that might be part of the confusion. But I think because there's a lot of comments, the data would still be useful for us. I'm wondering if maybe you could bring some goals. I could see some themes as I was reading through there that we have just talked about. So if it could be something about strengthening communication and norms, and our board culture is something that came up in clarifying and enforcing governance and operational roles. It was something that, to me, was highlighted over and over, and also rebuilding trust and alignment with our superintendent and leadership team. Just there's a lot of comments there, and everybody was really positive, but there's definitely some tensions. And then increasing our focus on data-driven decisions so that they are tied to our strategic plan goals.
Yeah, and you're right, Flor. When we get into the discussion at our next meeting, that will be where it is. We'll drill down more into some of the specifics and what we might want to create goals for us moving forward and that. Any other, and again, absolutely acknowledging that some may not have seen this until they came through the door as well. All right, not hearing anything more, then we'll move on to the PCB class action lawsuit. I do think a question came up about discussing this in...
I'm going to request that we discuss the agreement itself, not whether we move forward with a suit in executive session, just because I have some comments on the contract.
Okay. So then the question comes as to, so Stephen, can you give the history as to why this has come before us?
Yes, so we are one of the schools that tested for PCBs here in this building. And so PCBs were found in this building. And so that makes us a potential party to a lawsuit that is being filed to recover damages, essentially, because there's not enough funding from the state, definitely, to cover it. And so our attorney, who is listed here in the agreement, said that this would be something that we should be a part of. And then I think there are some other questions about the document itself I don't want to get into, right?
Who is it a lawsuit against?
All the makers of PCBs, but really, is it Monsanto?
I was going to say it's Monsanto, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which is what?
There's a lot of litigation going on across the country, and it's not common for suits to be filed regarding PCBs.
So is there a deadline for signing this?
We had already put it off because it was across the time period for town meeting and all of that. So we are being asked by our legal counsel to sign it as soon as possible, or for the board to authorize me to sign on behalf of the district is what this essentially is.
So I will defer to our previous chair as to handle a request for a executive session to discuss the details of the contract.
Two things is that this had come in front of the board before with our previous superintendent. We talked a little bit about it and we decided to hold and not sign just because we have new board members. We decided to hold and not sign because we didn't know if the state was going to have a separate lawsuit. What did that mean? And at that time they were just organizing what this meant. The lawsuit is about to get settled, and I believe that's why Pietro was reaching out to us. This is something that we were going to look at in more detail before, but then we hadn't been tested for PCBs, and then we got tested for PCBs, and we said that we were going to look at this in October of last, I think it was October. Stephen, I'm trying to remember because we were going back and forth on those emails, and then Pietro hadn't sent us what it was because we wanted more details. And Pietro just recently, literally like a week before I stopped being chair, reached out to me, and Stephen and I had a conversation, and they said like we can, he can sign it, but we said, of course, we need to bring it to the board before we sign this as a district. So that's the history. Because it's an action item, we can have an executive, you can have an executive session on an action item, and it's kind of an emergency executive session, but we just state why, and then you can proceed, and that discussing this in open session would put the board in harm's way, and we have our new clerk who is online too, but besides here, and we'll be coming back here. If you want to do it today, we could also postpone if you and Stephen think that you need more information, but if it's just to discuss.
Clarification purposes only, because
Okay.
I think there are things that are unclear and that we should be clearer on, that's all.
Okay.
And so, since the clerk is not here, are you able
He's,
to? Yeah,
Well,
but
But yeah, we need to be here, but I'm happy to make a motion. First, a finding that if we discuss it in public, it would put the board in a harm's way. It's not the right language, but I have it right in front of me. And then to move us into executive session to include our superintendent.
Is there a second?
And Suzanne.
Ursula, second. All those in favor of moving into executive session, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So ordered.
I'll make a motion to authorize, as coming out of executive session, make a motion to authorize our superintendent to sign the contract with, after he is provided clarification by the lawyer.
Second?
Clarification by the lawyer.
Second?
Second.
Second by Chris. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So ordered. Chris. Yep. All right, so then moving on to the finance, the award 2026 combined construction project contract. And do you need the motion made first, Suzanne, before we discuss?
I thought I might present a little
First. Okay.
Is there two motions?
There's two motions.
There are two motions, yes. I'm just going to walk you through the memo that's on page 17 a little bit. Usually I do. I get 2 minutes, maybe? Usually I do this with the finance committee first and give an overall, but because this came straight to this board meeting, I kind of want to give it here. The connection to the strategic plan, you can see that the capital improvement work directly supports goal number 1 of the strategic plan and aligns with the district's commitment to sustaining high-quality facilities that enhance teaching and learning outcomes across the schools. In September, the school board approved capital improvement project scope and budget for an amount not to exceed $1.2 million, $1.226901 to be exact. I've listed the breakdown there. The planning necessary to address the presence of PCBs in the U32 kitchen required an extension in the timeline for that project, so it was not included in the request for bid proposals for the combined project. The projected budget for the projects included in the bid was $808,886. The bid proposals were sent to 8 contractors and we received 2 bids. So that's not what we were hoping for, obviously. It's in line with what we received last year, in fact, the same 2 bidders. We received bids from EF Wall and Farrington Construction. The low bid submitted by EF Wall does exceed the cost estimate for construction, unfortunately by $573,821. The district can choose to reject all bids, rebid a reduced scope for the Doty and Callis projects in the current year, and defer the U32 and central office projects until the following year, so that's an option. But this is not the recommended board action because the district risks losing both bidders and receiving higher bids for the Doty and Callis projects. In addition, deferring portions of the project now will only result in increased costs in the future. I've met with the project team, including the architects, and we've been discussing different ways to get some tighter, stronger budgets on these, because we did develop a full scope and budget with our architects. So we would expect that these come in much closer than they have been. And our new project manager, Andrew LaRosa, has suggested that we, in addition to our architect, have an estimator come in for our next year projects to see if we can get these projects closer to what they're going to be bid at. We're pretty certain that these are close, given that the two bidders were so close in their bids. So I don't think the cost is going to get better if we defer projects. It's only going to get worse. So you can see the two different board action recommendations below.
Thank you, Suzanne. So before we discuss, is there a motion for the first motion? Ursula?
I move that the board authorize a transfer of $573,821 from the general fund balance to the capital reserve fund for the completion of the 2026 combined construction project.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Now discussion. Chris, did you have your hand up?
I do. So Suzanne, you said that the amount that we had authorized for what was sent out to bid was 808,000.
The original scope and
881?
budget developed by the architects was 808,886.
Okay.
Yep.
And those came back at basically 1,130,000 or so. 1 million, basically 1,400,000 all in.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So off by about 600,000 by us? And
573,821. Yes.
yeah, and that doesn't cover all these projects.
It covers everything but the kitchen, correct?
Kitchen. So it takes out the 400. And can we assume that the kitchen is low in terms
Yes.
of an estimate too?
Yeah, and right now the kitchen is going through some PCB planning,
Right.
and that's already at about 35,000. Unsure where that money, right now it's coming out of that capital project, so I don't know what we'll get from the state to offset it. And given the way these bids came out, yeah, I think that number is probably low.
Okay.
I think we're going to want to have an estimator come in and really look at it closely.
Okay, thanks for the clarity. Appreciate it.
Zach, did you have a question?
No, I think, Christine, I was just going to clarify, this did not include the kitchen project, but you got that.
Ursula?
I was curious if there was an idea from our engineers if this cost increase was in line with, I'll say, construction cost increases that have occurred recently.
I will say that they have spoken to both of these contractors, and in particular, the oil fuel tank came in much higher than what we would have expected. And one of them said they're completing a project somewhere else that's currently coming in at about $750,000. So this is lower than that. I think they're thinking things are just costing way more, and it's going up exponentially by the month. It's not even we can project this year very well.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Does question mean discussion or comment, or just questions, fact questions?
It's discussion over this motion.
We're being asked, what was the number, 500 and what other thousand? 573,000 to move from general fund to the capital budget fund to cover this increase. And I'm going to have a hard time voting for that if we're not also then going to be looking at transfer to take care of a math problem at Doty, because this is a similar type of thing, only a different topic. It's for capital improvement versus student improvement. And so if we're not able to, just giving a heads up, find a principal that can do the work for a teaching principal for math, I am going to be back later asking for a transfer from the fund balance to fund a math help at Doty, and I'm sure it will be less than $500,000 in terms of an extra need. But it's just, this is difficult for me. I think I'll vote in favor of it, but it's difficult for me because it's such a hugely different number than what we anticipated in March when we made the initial authorization. Thank you.
Go ahead.
I would just say, Chris, in response to the math piece, is that we're not requesting that at this point in time. So I think that our goal is to stay within the budget and meet those needs. And that if there were issues that came up in which we couldn't, then we would be back in front of the board and be asking of that. But I don't think we want to jump to say that we need fund balance yet until we've actually worked through the problem.
I would agree with you, but from what I've understood, the budget is really tight already in terms of meeting the students' needs across the board. So I don't see how, if we need more math help in terms of extra bodies, we don't need to go to the fund balance. And we're going to the fund balance significantly for a capital improvement project, which is, to me, is not as crucial as foundational math.
So Lay has his hand.
So, Suzanne, so you talked about the, how the board could have chosen to push back those an extra year, certain things. So is there a possibility that instead of voting for this, the board would be able to, is there things on that list that they talked about in September that could be postponed, not fiscally, but due to just a timeline wise? Like, is there things that are higher priority that we could take care of that would be under that allotted amount that they allotted in September, and then we can wait on the other stuff for later?
So the team discussed that. The board would have to reject the bid, and then we would recommend that the Doty and Callis projects proceed, and that the U32 and central office projects be deferred. They're all necessary, but we would want to complete the Doty and Callis projects first. But what I'm trying to emphasize is that the cost is going up every single month. It's rapid change in cost, and there's just no control of it. And I'm very worried that just by rejecting the bid, it's going to increase the cost of the Doty and Callis project. So I don't think those contractors will come back with the same cost, and we risk losing both contractors. They might both say, no, I'm not interested at all. So there's a lot of risk involved in rejecting the bids.
What's the word, what can we define necessary for all the projects? Like how necessary over, let's say, a time span of 2 years? Do we need to would we need to have them all done within 2 years? By your recommendation?
Yeah. I mean, we had planned to have them all done this year, and ideally we would. We're at life end of that fuel tank, so ideally it would be done this year. We talked about the risks of it failing on us. It does have a double wall, so we're not okay, we don't think this is going to happen today, but it is at its max of its life. And then the central office doesn't have a backup furnace, so if our furnace fails, we go without heat, and we don't have an office for 13 people. So there's risks involved, that's all.
Any other floor?
I would just want to add that this is good use of fund balance, and it does affect the students. And we've been carefully planning this for, not just in our 25-year plan for capital plan, but in our 5-year plan, in our 1-year plan. So there's a lot of investment that has already happened towards those plans, which we would be losing if we don't move ahead. This directly affects students because the built environment affects our student outcomes too. And it's sustainable because it's just a one-time movement. And Susan, could you just remind me, have we done our transfer? Did we do our transfer? We did. Yeah. Okay. That's it.
Any other comments, questions? Ursula?
I would just caution that delaying this, i.e. rejecting the bids, putting it back out there, in addition to the risk of not getting bids, increase it, like we end up with a risk of all of the projects combined costing us more in the long run and us making this same decision repeatedly where we go, well, let's just put it off. And this is a problem that can plague us and trickle down essentially through the years to where then we have deferred maintenance issues and then we're looking at bonds. And so we've worked really hard to put together this capital improvement plan so that we can avoid that, so that we can fund our own maintenance and fixes. And I think we need to stay committed to that.
Suzanne?
You know, that's a really good point on what the plan has been. I will say that these continued excessive costs really sadden me and make me concerned for that plan and wonder if we'll be able to sustain it. We're currently working on the next iteration of the capital improvement plan, which we bring to you every spring for reapproval and discussion of the next prioritization. We're going to have to really reassess those costs that are currently in there and how we're parsing it out. We're going to have to extend that plan either much further out or start talking about higher allotments in the budget. So, or possible bonding. We've got some decisions to make because these costs are just really out of control.
Chris?
No.
No, okay. So then how, with this $570,000 transfer, where does that put our fund balance in relation to the budget? You know, I'm talking about that, which is a 2%, 3% goal that we want to have?
I didn't check on that. I will say
Okay.
that we added to the fund balance $1 million at the end of FY25.
We did?
Yes.
Okay, never mind, thank you.
Any other comments or question? Okay, the motion is to transfer the $573,821 from general fund balance to the capital reserve fund for the completion of the 2026 combined construction project. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. The next recommended board action.
I move that the board award the contract for the project to EF Wall and Associate Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $1,191,540.
Second, Natasha. Discussion?
Is there, since they're so close, is there any reason for going with EF Wall other than the $9,000 difference?
We've worked with both contractors in very recent years and had really good experiences with both. So we'd recommend going with low bidder on this.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Not hearing any. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Sorry, online people, I'm cutting you off. Any abstentions?
I'm going to abstain.
Zach abstains, one abstention. The motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. All right, policy.
Thank you. So we have 3 policies up for discussion and adoption. And the first is our community use of school facilities policy. We made some minor changes to change like principal to superintendent and designee. We also made a change the numbers because we had some misnumbering.
Yeah, and I would just say that under, where it says category 1 there, town government bodies, what's in parentheses is struck. That was just a question that I'd had in there, and I'm sorry.
Okay, that's all right.
Yeah, that's not a part of the policy.
And we also had a change in the duration, giving the superintendent or designee authority to extend the duration of a particular use. Other than that, I don't think there's any significant changes.
The duration.
There is change.
I said the duration for.
Okay.
Number
I was saying
9.
Ursula. Number 9, yeah. Any, Zach, go ahead.
as a mathematician, I've got to ask, how do we have two number one priorities?
We don't, we have a top.
It's a tie.
That's, shouldn't that just be?
We changed it to top,
We changed it to
number one.
Change it to one. We changed it, so it's the town government bodies are number one.
We have a top and a first.
Right.
I know that. I'm saying it doesn't make sense.
It didn't make sense before.
So
I mean, I'm just saying, like, why isn't category just the first priority, categories to the second priority, et cetera?
History. An historical artifact.
So do you want to pass these as a slate, or do you want to do each individual?
No, I think we want to offer them to pass them and adopt them.
Okay. So it comes from committee to pass these three policies.
Zach, are you proposing an amendment?
Yeah, if it's fine, just amendment, and pass it through, and I'm not going to come back to committee.
Yeah, no. You can offer a proposed amendment.
Okay. I move we amend policy E20 so that, category 1 is the first priority, category 2 is the second priority, and, with the pattern to follow through all categories.
Okay, so just changing the descriptor of the priority.
Correct.
So it follows with the numbers.
Correct.
Okay. It's easy enough. Is there a second for the amendment?
I'll second.
Patrick? David?
Is there discussion?
Yeah.
Now.
And we're doing all three policies now?
No, we're just doing the first.
one.
Just one.
Then nothing.
Okay.
So as the amended, do people understand what the amended? So when we vote, we're voting first on the amendment.
Right.
And then we'll vote on the policy.
Right.
So all those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The amendment orders. So then the amended policy, all those in favor of the amended policy, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So ordered.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Second up, we have the distribution of non-school sponsored literature in schools.
Diane, sorry, point of order, who had moved the policy? We moved the amendment, but we did not move the policy, sorry. We
Usually
didn't
when
have
it
a
comes
motion
from a
to.
committee, you don't have to move it.
Well, somebody moves it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Sorry, yeah.
Okay. So we need to
Make
move
a motion, yeah, because you say it was going to be as late and then we're moving, so move this
So
one.
we have a motion to adopt E20 as amended. Is there a motion? I'll make the motion. Is
I'll
there a
second it.
Okay.
So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So ordered.
Great. Look at that, Diane, so ordered. We need to get you a gavel.
Moving on.
Next up is policy E21, which we amended just slightly, not much. It's been an existing policy. One of the questions that we had is whether we even want to have this policy so that you can have distribution of non-school sponsored literature in schools, because it can be a fraught area. I don't think we've had difficulty with it in practice. I don't think it happens much, but just given the First Amendment and constitutional issues, it can be a fraught area, I believe. But is there any comment on the, David?
You would make a motion in a second. then-
Okay. Is there a motion to adopt E21 as amended, as proposed?
I think that's my job that you're doing right there, but okay.
What?
It's my job.
Well, Floor,
So is there a
Floor's ratting
motion
me out.
to accept this policy as written?
So moved.
Second. All right, now discussion.
Okay. Dave?
I was just wondering if it might be possible to include in section 2C, prohibiting anything that went against the big block of text that was up on the screen earlier. that was
The humanities and
that
justice.
one. So essentially, we would prohibit distribution of anything that was counter to our humanities and justice policy, because I really liked that statement and felt like it gave a lot of latitude to ensure that anything that was getting distributed in the schools aligned with our philosophies.
Do you want to propose that amendment to this
I would
policy?
like to propose that amendment.
I think
I'm not sure I know how to do that properly.
So I think first, let's clarify what procedurally that might look like.
So I would just question that there's not necessarily specific language within, while the Humanity and Justice has specific language about classes and classification, all that, it's not specific about materials that may be used. We have so these are very specific things that we can refer to in the policy. And then I would also say we have the, and I'm sorry, I don't know exactly how it's titled, but the hate speech it's not a policy, but it's a resolution, right?
No,
that one of our resolutions. So we have a hate speech resolution that prohibits any of that, right? So it would. Go ahead, Natasha. You'll say it better than I do.
No, I was just
Microphone.
saying,
Microphone.
Could then we add something that specifically says that does not violate policies and resolutions that, I'm not going to word it right, but, you know, current policies and resolutions that exist within our district? Because I think a lot of our policies and resolutions back up that statement. And so it actually would give, I think, more specifics than the statement would. And it gives us something to point to.
Yeah, I don't know how to do it, but my goal is that the superintendent or these other folks having these reviews have all the latitude they need to keep the things out of the schools that we don't want in the schools.
So I think if that was an amendment, it would be 8, right? It could be 8 as part of C. And what was the phrasing that you said?
Good.
Natasha?
My phrasing was terrible.
Can I, go ahead.
I can do it, but I was going to give Dave an instructional moment on, you would go, I move to amend the motion to include section 2, number 8.
The C8.
C8, yep, I missed one. C8 to, I'm making sure. That violates any of our district policies
And
Resolution.
And resolutions.
and resolutions.
I'd second that.
Awesome.
That's a great move.
You accept that friendly amendment to your...
I absolutely do. I appreciate the help. Thank you.
Zach?
Does, my one concern here is that sort of in that same section, it's 2B is, says that the procedure shall not discriminate based on viewpoint. Does that create a conflict?
I was going to raise that issue as well. That would be my fear from a literature standpoint, that if there's a belief system that a student holds dear, that some would determine uncouth, does that inhibit one's belief or ability to enact their free speech or their own belief systems?
Right, so I think this is a nod to the equal access clause, right? So if I'm right on that, so we won't be able to. So remember, this is non-school sponsored literature for us, but that we can't discriminate based on viewpoint. So if we allow something, we will have to allow. If we allow one viewpoint, we would have to allow all viewpoints.
Right, so if that clause were to be put in, wouldn't that fly in the face of that approach? Because if it's claiming to, just playing devil's advocate here, wouldn't that?
No, so we already have a policy. So if you never adopted this policy, I would still be able to decline something based upon the existing policies and resolutions that already exist.
Okay, thank you.
Right, so if there were hate speech or hate symbols, those are automatically out, regardless of somebody's viewpoint, because we already have policy against that. So this is just really reinforcing that we have other policies that back up our humanity and justice statement and that would, so this is just really giving us a little more strength to say that we're not, you can't just distribute anything in our school, that's particularly things that are not related to school activities, which is one of the reasons why we put affinity groups in there, because our affinity groups, we want them, because there are groups of people, we want to make sure that their literature can be distributed.
But this applies to non-school related
Correct.
activities, and I think that's a good point, actually, in terms of it could be a First Amendment violation because you are discriminating based on the viewpoint, and it's unlike the flag policy where the board is sponsoring the flag, and so we're saying it's not an open forum. This is more open than that because the board is not sponsoring this literature or whatever's being
Well, how about we table?
Yeah.
And then,
have a discussion
make
about that.
sure that we check, but this was vetted through the VSBA's council,
Yeah.
but we can check with our council as well. So why don't, if we table it, we can check, this wasn't something that, like, it's not, there's no critical issue pushing this at this moment.
So I think we can vote on the amendment and then table it. Zach?
Oh, no, sorry, this was not related to that amendment, so if we want to table that amendment, let's do that first.
Okay. Well, first we were going to vote on the amendment.
I think the question was whether or not we would table the amendment and thus.
No, because it's
Because
B.
wanted
He
legal-
wants to
Well,
remove
yes, I
B.
know.
No, I
Nobody
think
was
we
asking to
were
remove
just
B.
adding, not removing.
No,
We weren't removing B.
didn't ask to remove
There was a
it.
question as to whether B
I was
would
headed
be in
towards
conflict.
removing B.
What?
I was headed towards removing B, but.
Oh, you are? Okay.
No.
I thought that's was what was being referenced.
Can I
We'll just
say,
table
if
it.
we table it right at this spot, then we can clear all this up and come back
Okay,
to it.
good idea.
Yeah. So so to table, somebody has to make a
So-
motion to table
Right.
until a future meeting.
Is there a motion to table?
I will move that we table it to a future meeting pending review with our legal counsel and maybe bringing it back to policy.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Dave. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? So ordered.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Zach?
Also in this section 2C3, where it says that we prohibits literature that advocates the use or availability of tobacco, alcohol, or illegal drugs. Given the gray area that marijuana is in right now, do we need to include that, or can we still assume that that gets counted as an illegal drug?
It is for our age group.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Next up, we have
Well, so's alcohol.
our cell phone use policy. Is there a motion to adopt?
Is there a
Cell phone
motion to
use.
adopt this policy?
I'm just asking.
You can just move it.
You know, maybe I should get
I'll move.
a stool so I don't get confused.
I'm
by being-
seconding
Yeah.
Chris's move.
Thank you, thank you.
Move,
Thank
motion,
you,
sorry.
Barb. Discussion.
Is there a motion?
There is. You
was a
moved
second?
it, she
Was a sec-
seconded it.
Go. Floor second, thanks. Save my bacon.
See my gray hair?
Lay.
Just have one question with it, is that with that new, I believe there was that state regulation that was passed, do we still need that within our district's policy, even though it is listed as state law? Just want to clarify.
Yes, state requires us to everyone to put a policy in place.
Okay.
And just, go ahead, I'm so sorry.
You can go.
No, go.
This is something we've talked about at the policy committee too, is that if we don't adopt this, it just becomes de facto policy July 1st. And right now, our student council, is it student council? Our student council is working on the procedures that will go along with this policy, which is really cool.
And the procedures, once they're done, will come before us as well. So we'll know what the procedures are related to the cell phone policy.
Any other discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstaining? So moved. All right, so for negotiations, our report is that for the teachers, we have continued discussion around donated sick leave, and we also began a discussion about co-curricular salary scheduled stipends. And then we had a shared session, and we worked on shared issues around religious leave and safety. So that's the report for negotiations. Personnel.
Can I ask a clarifying question there?
Yes.
Does that directly tie into the letter that was read by Natasha, so that is fielding that issue? Is that correct?
So as we're discussing things, that was a letter that came to the negotiations committee. We looked at it. It was part of our discussions. And that, okay. All right, so personnel.
I'll make a motion for our new hire, Emily Smith, world language at U32.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So order.
For retirement, Gillian Fuqua, principal of Doty Elementary School, effective June 30th, 2026, and with the acknowledgement of all the work that Gillian has done and all the growth and all the hard work and that she did, especially the last 2 years through configuration.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ursula.
Michelle can have it.
And I'd also comment on Gillian's grace under significant stress this year, as how she managed over 2 years, actually, not just 1 year, 2-year process of managing a very difficult and trying situation, and did, again, with a lot of grace and good humor and openness for students, with students that are at the forefront, really. And I think she did demonstrate just how compassionate and loving she is toward her community. And so I really appreciate those efforts.
Thank you, Chris. Any other comments?
I would just echo what Chris said. So when I was principal, I worked in a very different role with Gillian, but as superintendent, as her supervisor, I really came to appreciate the great amount of joy that she brings to the job and to people. She regularly baked things for her school, showed up at all those events, and I really want to just say that it was a pleasure to be able to work with her over these last year and a half, 2 years in her role, and so she will be missed. She's a unique individual who brought a lot of great diversity to our team.
Great. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And
And-
so ordered.
The last one, long-term substitute for 25-26, and Chapman, world language at U32.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ursula. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay? So ordered. All right. Then the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of 2/18? I'm sorry, go ahead.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion?
Natasha?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So ordered. Board orders. Ursula.
I move that we approve the board orders from the date range in February 13th, 2026 to March 18th, 2026 in the total amount of $776,044.19.
Is there a second? Second by Zach. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So ordered. Future agenda items. We have on here superintendent evaluation. We will need to do that. Then the follow-up to our voluntary merger possibilities and conversations that we began today. We also heard from Daniel a request about exploring with community connections, having a more informed knowledge of of that and what it looks like. We also had a request for public comment parameters and revisiting that as well. Any other future agenda items, Chris?
I do. To ask the board to consider what efforts we may be able to make to try and maximize resources across the district to address student need now that the budget has passed, and just see if there's any effort to try and find another way of maximizing our resources and extending them to the district as a whole to meet student need. So see if there's instituting some type of committee to study that.
Okay. And then Ursula, did you have your hand up?
Simply that we need to come back to the board self-evaluation in detail.
Yep. Anything else? All right. Board reflections? Zach?
I just want there have been a few references to letters we received from a couple of seventh graders. When I received, I had written something back just explaining a little bit of the process, since I know that when last time we were dealing with an HR issue, we didn't explain that well, and and I just wanted to commend the students. I got back a very quick and very professional reply, and I think I was really impressed with that, especially coming from a seventh grader. Let's remember, this wasn't like a junior or a senior, so I think I just want to recognize how sort of how well those students handled that in approaching the board.
Thank you, Zach. Any other board reflections? Yep.
One last thing is just want to recognize Keely. She couldn't be with us today, but she was online for a little bit, but then she couldn't. It's her last official meeting with us. So just recognize all of her contributions that she has made to the board. So thank you, Keely, and just a reminder to everybody that was her last meeting, and just to be able to and post the vacancy, which Diane is already now on top of it too. But thank you, Keely, and so that it is there.
Yes.
There, and I'm meeting with her later to give her something on behalf, just because it was a previous board member.
Yes.
So just wanted to let you know.
Yes. I will bring a card to the next meeting as well for us to all share.
Okay.
Great. Public comment? Are we in public comment yet?
Well, are we done with board reflections? And then, yes, we will be moving into public comment, so hold on to that for just a minute. Is there anyone online who would like to have public comment? I'm just going to mine really.
I have a reflection.
Oh, okay. So let's back up a little bit, a reflection, and then we'll come back to
I just want to say, I really appreciate what the students had to say here. I think it added much to the discussion. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Marty. All right, so I know that Julia had her hand up for public comment, and then we'll come to you, Chris, okay? So go ahead, Julia.
Diane, I don't know if you might want to hold off if there are other people. I had a request to read a letter from a group of people in Calais. Should I wait to do that?
So I think that was what Chris had also pointed out to me as well, and that. So why don't you, I don't see anyone else, and so Julia, go ahead and read it.
Okay. So it says, Dear WCUUSD School Board, I should say who it's from probably first. This is from a group of instructors at Calais School. So, dear school board, looking at the proposed changes across our 5 elementary schools for the coming school year and the impact these will have on equity among our schools, we have several questions and concerns in 2 main areas: preschool for Calais students and constraints on class configuration. Preschool should remain in Calais is the heading of the next section. Per the board meeting resources for the March 18th meeting, pre-K enrollment as of March 13th is 25 Berlin, 9 to 13 in Calais, 11 East Montpelier, and 17 Middlesex, plus 2 Worcester. This means that 4 locations will meet the requirements for at least one session of preschool, having a minimum of 8 students. But of those, only Calais is being denied the opportunity to educate preschoolers in their own town. The enrollment chart shows with an asterisk that the Calais numbers reflect only preschoolers who have been fully enrolled, not those who are predicted to enroll. Does that mean that all of the other numbers on the chart are students who are fully enrolled and plan to attend district preschool, not Act 166? Given that Calais meets the requirements for a preschool session, that session should be located at Calais Elementary School. Our community overwhelmingly voted to keep their children in their hometown school. The board packet for March 18th claims that Calais pre-K students will arrive at East Montpelier Elementary School at 8:55 each morning. Buses do not consistently arrive at Calais until 8:55 and can arrive after 9 o'clock in winter and mud season. This means that Calais pre-K and K students will miss scheduled class time that their East Montpelier peers will receive each day. We have been told that the best practice is for providers to travel, not children. If there are the right number of students for one session at East Montpelier and one session at Calais, one morning, one afternoon, we could maintain 1.0 FTE and still adhere to best practices by having the teacher travel, not the students. Based on the assumption that Calais pre-K and K students will be going to East Montpelier Elementary School has requested that 2 teacher positions be added to their school. At the same time, this change means that a teacher position will be cut from Calais. It appears that a teacher will be involuntarily transferred from Calais to East Montpelier Elementary School based on Calais students being moved to East Montpelier Elementary School. How is this equitable and fair? If Calais pre-K students going to EMES brings enough money to add 2 teacher positions at the same time that a position is being cut from Calais, why can't that money stay with the children at their home school? One district, one budget. Where does the money for this or these positions, why does the money for these positions only exist if the students are housed at East Montpelier, but not if those students are housed at Calais? Why is the old system of individual schools getting money, ADM, still being used in our one budget, one district system? This perpetuates inequities across our 5 elementary schools. Constraints on class configuration need case-by-case exceptions. The reality of next year is that Calais is staying open and educating at least grades 1 through 6. Why not provide the flexibility to arrange those students in an effective way? Looking at factors such as the number of students in each grade, the needs of those students, and the number of support staff, specifically one-on-one paraprofessionals assigned to each grade level, the district requirements that only 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, 6 may be combined would lead to significant disparities in class sizes and student needs between teachers. Providing an exception to these constraints would allow for classrooms that have well-balanced sizes and needs. For example, following the district requirements would result in 7 students with IEPs and 3 one-to-one support staff in one classroom next year, with a total number of students above the recommended class size, and another classroom of 24 students with significant needs as well. Our district prides itself on being student-centered, yet many of these decisions are based on what works best for staff and administrators. We are purported to be one district with one budget, with a common goal of serving our students equitably. With the current plan, equity is not going to be achieved. This, along with other concerns, are affecting staff, family, and student morale. We request that this letter be posted to the school board website. We also request that the 2 issues outlined above, preschool at Calais and exceptions to multi-age classroom configurations, be added to the agenda for the next school board meeting. Respectfully submitted, Jamie Bone, special educator, Jenna Howard, literacy interventionist, Heidi Schmidt, SLP, Mary Ellen Munday, math interventionist, Ainsley Burrows, classroom teacher, Cheryl Eklund, classroom teacher, Laura Lee Kuravu, classroom teacher, Callie Weller, classroom teacher.
Thank you, Julia. There any other? I don't see any other hands. We do have a need for an executive session. Flora, would you be able to do that request since our clerk is not here?
I'm happy to move us into executive session. To include Stephen Dellinger Pate.
And to discuss student residency requests.
Yeah, residency requests.
Is there a second? Second from Patrick. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
I move that we accept the recommendation of the superintendent in the residency requests.
Is there a second? Ursula seconds. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? So ordered. Is there a motion to adjourn? Chris and Michelle. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Oh, good.